Okay. I'd like to call to order the Tuesday, May 22nd, meeting of the Princeton Board of Education. Welcome to this public meeting of the Princeton Board of Education. The board is an elected, unpaid group of 10 citizens who set policy and make decisions on educational, financial, and personnel matters for the Princeton Public Schools on behalf of all residents. We're always pleased when members of the community attend our meetings. The board and the school district operate under applicable New Jersey laws and under regulations of the New Jersey State Board of Education. Each meeting includes several opportunities for those attending to comment on items on the published agenda or other matters of interest to them. The board reserves the right to limit the time allotted to public participation, and law limits discussion of individual personnel and confidential matters. And as many of you know who've been here before, we have two public comment sessions, one in the beginning on any matter of interest to any speaker, and that will be 20 minutes, and then also a second public comment period for agenda items only. And other than our statutory restrictions on personnel matters, we also always ask that members of the public follow the civility policy that we've adopted for ourselves, our teachers, and our children, that we treat each other with respect, and that we're here for a free flow of information. We're not here to insult one another, and we're here to learn from one another. So with that, Ms. Kennedy, will you take the roll?
Patrick Sullivan.
Here.
Betsy Calber-Baglio.
Here.
Beth Barron.
Here.
Debbie Braunfeld.
Here.
Jessica Deutsch.
Here.
Bill Hare.
Here.
Daphne Kendall. Absent. Greg Stankiewicz.
Here.
Michelle Tuck Ponder. Absent. Evelyn Spahn.
Here.
Brian Liu. Absent. Amy Wang.
Here.
Thank you.
And one other thing before we go to the adoption of the minutes, there's a sign-up sheet for anyone who would like to speak in either of our public comment sessions out in the hall. And hopefully you saw it if you wanted to speak. If not, there's still time to sign up. But we'll take that, and then we'll try and give everyone a chance to speak. We want to make sure that everyone gets an opportunity. So if you haven't signed up and you want to, please check outside. Okay, and with that, we're to item D, adoption of the minutes. We've had two meetings since we were meeting now, one on April 24th, and can I have a motion for that? Debbie, in a second. Jess? Okay, any questions or comments on that? And we need a show of hands, or is it a vote? It's a vote, sorry. Okay, yeah, it's online. Okay, welcome back. Okay, and we're all set? Okay, and then we need, for adoption of the minutes of May 8th, a motion and a second. Motion, Beth, and a second, Debbie. Any questions or comments on those minutes? Okay, and that's an online vote as well.
Before you get set up, you want me to place a vote for you on those minutes? Minutes, May.
Yes, please. Yes, please.
Okay, with that,
We have one more.
one more?
No.
All good? Okay, so with that, we're turning to item E, which is my report. Two things. First, we hope to have, under item E, a first read on the Cranberry School District sending and receiving contract. We're still working out the details on that. The two sides' councils are, so we didn't have a contract that we could look at tonight, and therefore we're taking it off the agenda for tonight, and we'll be looking at it over the next month or so. So So the only thing I have yet then to comment on is the meeting tonight. One of the things that, as everyone knows, we've been spending a lot of time on in the last year, or the last calendar year, is budgetary issues, referendum issues, the issues of dollars and cents and money. The reason that I was motivated to join the school board and serve this community was for the children. Of course, money is always a part of that, but I really hoped that we could focus on taking our excellent education system, which, by the way, I'm sure many of you saw, came out in U.S. News World Report. I don't put a lot of credence in surveys like that personally, but nonetheless, when it's good, when you get a good grade, you want to at least brag about it a little bit. And Princeton Public Schools, and especially Princeton High School, was rated in the top 1% of public high schools in the country, something we can all be very proud of. Proud of our children, proud of all you parents out there, and proud of our teachers and administrators for the tremendous job they do for our children. So I did want to point that out tonight. But we've always wanted to make it better. I think that the 10 people on this board all have a child focus, and we think about not just our superstar kids, we think about our underdogs as well. And we want to make sure that we provide an educational environment for all of our children that develops all of them and makes them all feel empowered and growing and learning how to ask those great questions and how to think analytically. No matter what your grades, no matter what APs you take, there's certain things that we all believe you should take away from a great public education. And so tonight, our high school principal, Gary Snyder, is going to talk about some changes to the high school schedule. It's part of a range of changes that we've made over the past 18 months and beyond as part of our strategic plan to really focus on the environment of learning in our schools and to do the things that we can do to make it better. Even though we are, really top right now, we are striving to be even better for every child. And so I'm really excited to hear Mr. Snyder and what he's going to say tonight. And that's, to me, why we're all here. And with that, I guess we'll turn it over now to Gary Snyder, and then you report later, Steve. Is that how you?
Actually, I can.
Oh, it's part of your superintendent report. I apologize.
Yeah.
So you
No,
go
no,
ahead.
that's fine.
Yeah.
So I'll be introducing Mr. Snyder in just a moment. I did want to begin this evening by offering our collective condolences as a school community to the families and friends of the students and staff who were killed last week at Santa Fe High School. I think it's imperative that we not become accustomed to these tragedies and that we continue as a country to ensure that our children, teachers, and staff feel safe each day that they're in school, and that focuses on their physical safety and just as much on their emotional and mental health and well-being. And I'm grateful for the steps we continue to take here in Princeton to ensure our students' physical and emotional safety, and I'm particularly grateful for the continued support of our parents, our police, and our many community partners who are devoted to the same goal. Shifting slightly, we now have a month until graduation and the start of summer. This is the season of concerts and plays and science days. It is the season of author celebrations and athletic championships. It's an exciting time in the life of our district, and I just want to take this moment to commend all of our students and the teachers and the staff who support and inspire them. And then turning now to what you were referencing before. Next year, we inaugurate a new schedule at the high school and what I think will be a new era of learning. Princeton High School Principal Gary Snyder is here tonight to walk us through the schedule and help us envision what it means for students. But before I turn the floor over to you, Gary, I want to provide just a little context for the tremendous work he and his staff have undertaken. As I know this board is aware, all that we do here in the Princeton Public Schools is tied to our mission to prepare all of our children to lead lives of joy and purpose as knowledgeable, creative, and compassionate citizens of a global society. And undergirding that mission are 5 major goals, the chief of which is wellness and balance. So high-level learning does not happen in a state of anxiety. High-level learning happens when students are thoughtfully, actively, joyfully engaged in their studies. It happens when they are challenged to create new knowledge, ask new questions, make meaningful connections across subjects and to their own lives, and to collaborate with classmates in the solution of real-world problems. High-level learning, joyful, purposeful learning is the balance of hard work and wellness. And in helping our students achieve that balance, we've been relying in part on the research of the Challenge Success organization out of Stanford University. So the mission of Challenge Success is to promote a broad definition of success, partnering with communities and schools, families across the country, implement research-based strategies so that all kids are healthy and engaged with learning. Those research-based strategies can be found in a framework known as SPACE, which you see here behind me. So the S is for student schedule and use of time. The P is for project and problem-based learning. The A for alternative and authentic assessments. The C, climate of care. And the E is for education for the whole community. Each domain of the framework is important, and we are in the process of implementing strategies connected to all five. So I commend this site to those of you watching at home and those of you here tonight. Gabe, if you scroll down, you will see that under each of the sort of domains, there are bullet points of strategies that can be implemented, and we are picking and choosing from those set of strategies so that we're implementing change across the full range of domains within the SPACE framework. But if you scroll back up to the top, Gabe, down a little bit more. That first one, the very first strategy, this one right here, revise school schedules, including late start days, modified block, full block, or trimester schedules. It's the very first research-based strategy that leads to this change in the deeper level of learning and that sense of joy and purpose that we want our students to experience as they move through our schools. So I've been involved in trying to radically change schedules at school districts in the past. It is not easy. It typically takes multiple years and creates consternation among teachers and staff, and that has not been the case here. I really want to commend Mr. Snyder for leading his faculty through what I believe was a comprehensive, visionary, data-based, and student-centered process that has unified and energized the faculty. And with that, I would just invite Mr. Snyder now to share the results of the work that he and his faculty and administrative team have done to put together the schedule for next year. Mr. Snyder.
Good evening. Thank you. I thought I would start with a little story because this has been a journey. We started in September 2016 when I think thoughts just started to come together. Students were expressing how they were feeling, teachers were expressing how they were feeling, and I could sum up that in a sense that we were all just going as fast as we could go, and it never seemed to be good enough or fast enough. The pace, the freneticness of what we were trying to do was just more than could be done in a 7-hour and 1-minute day the way we were presently structured, the way we are structured. And so we wanted to start to think about it differently. And that photo in September of 2016, I asked permission to do something a little bit different on a professional development day. And we were allowed. So professional development with 150 teachers usually looks like all of us sitting in the cafeteria or all of us sitting in the auditorium and someone standing in the front talking at us. And I wanted to do it differently because I was trying to also model maybe how we might do high school differently and not always be in rows of classrooms with a teacher in the front. And so we took a trip. We went to Philadelphia, and that's an image of one of the murals we saw. We did the mural tour of Philadelphia. And you might be thinking, what does that have to do with anything? But the theme of the day was learning with walls and without walls, right? We were in an open space with 150 teachers to do professional development, Trying to differentiate that is difficult because they're all in different academic areas. Some are first-year teachers, some have been doing it for nearly 50 years. And so they were able to go on a path that best served them. They were able to build the connections that worked for them. And we learned some things that we might not have learned if we were sitting in an auditorium and being told some of the stories that we saw. One of the stories, just as a note, if you're not familiar with the murals in Philadelphia, the project started back with Mayor Good. They had a graffiti problem, and they were arresting people for graffiti, and they weren't catching up to it fast enough. The graffiti problem was growing faster than they could punish people, right? And so they stepped back and had a different thought about it, and they thought about restoring justice in a different way, and so they went to murals, and they went to groups of individuals who were doing graffiti and said, if we give you a wall where you can express yourself, will you do that and then not paint other walls that we haven't given you permission for? And that is what has turned out in Philadelphia. There are a lot of murals, and they build community, and they tell stories. And we learned from that by not sitting in a classroom, and we learned things we didn't expect to learn. And that's part of where the journey started, to get us to think a little bit differently. So some of the why we then came together when we started to think about change. We really had to spend time on why and trying to explain that to ourselves. So we had the sense, and then I'll tell you about the survey that really started to give evidence to what we were sensing. It felt like we were just doing school, and that comes out in the survey, which I'll mention in a minute. Also felt like there just was not enough time, teachers feeling like there's not enough time, kids feeling like there's not enough time, and so we had to, again, think of how we might do this differently. I've mentioned in prior presentations, Marzano is an educational researcher, and he has laid out all of the standards K through 12. And when he looks at those standards, he will tell you they take 23 years to go through those standards. And we only have 12 or 13 if we count kindergarten. So it is impossible to do the curriculum and the standards from A to Z completely in the way we presently do it. There is simply not enough time. So we wanted to step back from that and rethink that. And obviously, everyone was feeling that stress of not enough time, trying to go faster, and then doing things on a superficial level, not having time to go deeper. So our work, as Mr. Cochran mentioned, was research-based. We went back and we read John Dewey from 1916, and we read a little bit from Heidi Hayes Jacobs from 2016, 100 Years Difference, and they're saying very similar things. For learning, you need to apply the knowledge. You can sit in a classroom. There is a time and a place for the theoretical piece, and you also need time to apply what you're learning, to experiment, to have hands-on. And in our present schedule, there's not a lot of time to do that. There's not a lot of time to dig in deeper to a subject. The bell's going to ring in 44 minutes, and you're off to your next subject. So we wanted ways that we could have more experiential, more hands-on, more active learning situations in the school. The next two, Pedro Noguera and Michael Fullen, that should be Michael with an H, sorry. They also work on topics of deeper learning, which Mr. Cochran mentioned, but also from a couple different lenses. And one of those lenses, Pedro Noguera, looks at it from an equity lens. So again, for all students to have opportunities to dig deeper into the learning, to be able to have discussions that go longer than a 44-minute class period, that allow that exploration and curiosity to happen in school. So we formed a design team, and we were very much in that design mode, and we started to talk about what specs we wanted for this project we were building. We were building a new schedule. I think it's important to say we didn't copy it from anybody. There are a lot of high school schedules out there, and we resisted that temptation to simply pick a different model. We wanted to talk a lot about what it is that we wanted, what was important to us, and those were those specs. So in our building phase, we listed things that we wanted, that were important, that were research-based, and those became then, as we began to build prototypes. We had I don't know how many different versions of schedules over the course of 12 to 18 months and trying to put things together. So we would have a prototype, we would put it out, we'd get feedback, we would take it back and tinker with it, we'd put it back out and have those conversations. So the overarching goals then, to promote student and staff well-being, to foster deeper learning and increase student engagement. The survey has been mentioned already. I'll mention a little bit. Again, that student engagement piece is a piece that we're looking at closely. That comes out in that term, just doing school. We have students who are very good at doing school, right? You can give them an assignment, ask them to do this work, study for this test. They will do school and they will do it well, but they're not always getting enough time to go deeper. Their learning can be superficial at times in the rush to get to the next subject. And then also to work on these other areas of fostering collaboration, of having time to work in groups, to collaborate with one another, for teachers and students to be able to collaborate. We heard that early on where teachers would express it and students were expressing the same thing. They wanted time simply to meet with each other, not always in class time. So other times, office hours, call it whatever you wanted, but they wanted time to be able to find each other and to have time to meet. We wanted to work on the other skills, the problem-solving skills, the multidisciplinary work, the interdisciplinary work. Again, a traditional high school, we divide up all those subjects, right? And they don't always seem to connect. But in life out of high school, in other realms, you're asked to connect those things. When you're given a problem, you need a multiple of disciplines to bring it together, and then usually a group and a team of people to bring it together. So we talked about creativity, we talked about critical thinking, some of our goals when we put this together. So the specs for this schedule, right? So these are the things we wanted, and then later we had to put them on a piece of paper, which I'll show you that grid. We went to the research and it was pretty clear about a later start time, so we recommended a later start time. We wanted to have both long periods and short periods. So the long period traditionally is somewhere around that 45-minute mark, long being around 90 minutes. I'll show you where that came out. We didn't quite hit those numbers as we made some choices, but we'll have both long and short periods. I think I should catch my breath and pause and say this because I always do when I start talking about a schedule. There is no perfect schedule. There are always trade-offs. So when I'll try to explain some of the things where we've made decision points, you could go in a different direction. You can move the pendulum one way or another, but then there's always a trade-off. And so we've considered, I think most, if not all, of the different trade-offs. And so one of those trade-offs, we didn't want all long period days, and we didn't want all short period days. We went with both, okay? We wanted, obviously, to maximize the instructional time, but we also wanted to work in some other times, which I'll come back to. But for example, when I said teachers and students just wanted time to meet outside of class, we wanted to structure that so there would be time for that. We wanted to rotate the periods. That means presently we have periods 1 through 8, and every day they start with 1, and every day they end with 8, and they go 1 through 8, except on special days when we're testing and things like that. But they don't rotate. And there are advantages to rotating. There's some downsides to rotating, but in the end, and that was one of the things we worked on for a long time, and really concluded that the rotation served a lot of the things we were looking to address. It does a couple of things. The rotation means your first period class isn't always your first class of the day. And your last period class won't always be the last class of the day. They will shift in times during the day. I'll show you that in detail when I get a little bit further along. We wanted to have variation in the days and in the weeks. Again, especially maybe this time of year, as we stand here in May, day after day of the same schedule and the same order of classes, it does get tiring. It does wear on you. So we wanted to break up that monotony a little bit, to have some variation in a day. This day is going to look different than the next day. This week is going to look different than the next week. We included a break in the morning and extended the lunchtime to be longer. Both of those were important, especially the longer lunchtime. And we've been working on that for years, so we've made lunch a little bit longer. And then we wanted to have flexible time, and I'll speak more about that when we get to the schedule. We wanted to have time that, again, wasn't telling everybody exactly where to be. When we say it's first period, that 1,600 kids and 150 teachers know where they're supposed to go first period. So we wanted to have time where there was some flexibility of where people might go and how they might match up and what work they might be able to do. So that was a lot of the 2016-2017 year. 2017-2018, the work has continued. We've created 2 more design teams. I'll go quickly over those. But we have a design team looking at how we use the space, and a design team on our curriculum instruction and assessment, and going through some of those same steps of creating specifications, specs for what we want, and then trying to put together designs that will help us get there. Those 3 things, the how we use time, the how we use the space, and the curriculum instruction assessment that goes with those 3 things, are intertwined. They're absolutely intertwined, and that's the work that we're continuing to do now. So obviously, I know we're talking about a referendum in space at the high school. It's more space, more classrooms of what we need, but it's also some spaces that will allow us to do some things that aren't as easy to do now. And that's when, if we're talking about a classroom, that allows the classroom to break out, allows the furniture to be moved around, that allows enough space for groups to form and not have to be crammed into one small classroom. It gives them a little bit of space if they're working on group projects, whatever it might be. So we've had a number of people involved. With the 3 design teams at the high school, there's roughly 14, 15, 16 people on each design team. That's about 45 adults, and some students have been on design teams and have presented on design teams. So a lot of faculty involvement, and we've had parents involved with us along the way as well. HHJ is Heidi Hayes Jacobs. A number of us have been attending workshops with her. She's still working with us. She's the guru in the United States and probably the world when it comes to curriculum and instruction and the work we're trying to do. We have a video conference call with her tomorrow. She's working closely with us. So it's been ongoing professional development as we've looked to make this change for September 2018. Continuously looking at the why to remind ourselves why we're doing it. We've used our in-service time and our other time for planning and preparation. We've had a couple of times this school year, seems like a long time ago already, that we had practice days. We practiced the longer block days, so we had some in-service time and faculty time to prepare, and teachers adjusted lessons to be able to do in the longer blocks of time. We practiced those a couple of times, took some feedback from those days. So those were helpful in rethinking things. So in that regard, our professional development at times has been embedded. It's in our daily work. And moving towards what Heidi Hayes Jacobs calls contemporary teaching and learning. That last note is we've awarded badges, which is just, again, we've been modeling different things and trying different things. They're digital badges, so it's actually a way of recognizing work and setting a criteria and saying if you do X, Y, and Z, you earn a badge. You're familiar with that concept, right? But it can be done digitally now. There are actually universities who are using that in place of credits. It's an assessment tool and a way to recognize that work. So back to the Stanford Challenge success. Some of the part of the journey, and I know you remember here, we had students doing surveys, and they were, again, finding what we were believing in our hearts and in our guts, but we then wanted another survey, and the Stanford Survey exists. It's used through high schools throughout the country. It's validated and a very reliable tool, and so we've administered it twice. And out of it, a number of things, but some suggestions that we've taken and tried to incorporate into this work. In this survey, it asked students how much free time they have, which is very low as what they're reporting. And so we wanted to think about how during our day we could have time that's free, that you're not absolutely supposed to be in a certain class, that you had some flexibility, and I'll show you where that comes out. Again, I've mentioned it a couple times, they want time to work with teachers outside of class. There were suggestions about a longer lunch period, which we've been able to do. There were suggestions in asking for more time for clubs and activities. Those generally happen after school. So we wanted to be able to provide some time in the school day for clubs and activities to happen. It doesn't mean they won't still happen after school, but wanted to be able to have that during the day for students who maybe that's the only time they could participate. So as an issue of equity, to allow access for everybody, actually providing that time during the day. There was an ask for longer class periods and an ask to do homework, time to do homework. So we wanted to incorporate that into the schedule as well. Those are the space framework that Mr. Cochran mentioned. And in one manner, shape, or form, we're trying to incorporate all of those into the work we're doing and in the schedule work. There's how it all comes together. It's been my mantra through this. If we only change our schedule and change nothing else, it really won't be lasting significant change. And so that is why we've taken our time to make the time adjustments while we think about the adjustments to space and how we use our space while we are looking at curriculum instruction and assessment simultaneously. It's a big lift to do it simultaneously, and yet if you don't, you'll feel like you're doing something, but it won't be consequential because you haven't done the other pieces. So it's simultaneous. Of course, it's not. It gets to that expression of trying to build this airplane while we're flying it, right? So we can't destabilize it completely to keep it in the air, but still trying to do all those pieces at the same time. And as Mr. Cochran said, I've been really happy with the faculty and the work that we've done. We've had really good conversations. 150 teachers at Princeton High School. We don't agree all the time, but we've had really good conversations and really getting to the heart of what we think is important and what we want to do. So there's a schedule. And Gabe tells me I have a pointer. Ooh, look at that. Okay. Let me try to walk this through with you, if you can follow along. So a couple of features of this schedule. It's probably important to say we have an 8-period day now and a 7-day cycle. And when I explain that at back to school night or orientation, most parents and adults don't always understand what that means. You have to live the cycle days to understand the cycle days. So this will may come to you in that way as well. So across the top, we're going to have 6 different days. An A day, a B day, C, D, E, F. We might change those names to be more clever, but for now, 6 different days. And they will be a 6-day cycle, which means it's not a 5-day, which means it's not a Monday through Friday cycle. So if today is an A day, tomorrow will be B, and the next day will be C, and it carries into the next week, and after that F day will be another A day. So that will be a 6-day cycle throughout the school year. The first 4 days look familiar. They are 8-period days, 44 minutes each, but they rotate. So the A day looks very familiar. Period 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. With lunch, morning break. That's pretty close to what we have now, except I should point out the 8:20 start with a 3:21 dismissal. B, C, D are also 8-period days, but you'll begin to see the rotation. The morning rotates and the afternoon rotates. It doesn't rotate 1 through 8. So 1, 2, 3, 4 will rotate in mornings. 5, 6, 7, 8 rotate in afternoons. So that B day, then the first period in the morning will be period 2, and then period 3, and then 4, and then 1. And then the C day will start with a 3 and rotate, and the D day will start with period 4 and rotate, and the afternoon is doing a similar kind of rotation. We do have a group of students working on an app that you will be able to follow this rotation on your phone. I'll come back to that. Let me tell you about the two. Then we have 2 long block days. So the classes will be 77 minutes each. On an E day, starts at 8:20, have 2 longer blocks in the morning, a 40-minute lunch break, 2 longer blocks in the afternoon. Those days have 10 minutes between classes for passing time. The last class ends at 2:32. And then there is tiger time. I'll come back to that. The F day is similar, different periods rotating, 2 in the morning, 40-minute lunch break, 2 in the afternoon, and then the afternoon of peer group community service. Those of you familiar with our Wednesday schedule now, this is largely that Wednesday look, right? So what happens on Wednesday now would happen on the afternoon of F days. It just won't always be on a Wednesday because it's a 6-day cycle. Having both of these blocks of time at the end of the day, we did contemplate putting them at different times of the day, but putting them at the end is similar to what we do now with peer group, of course, and it also ends 2 days out of 6 classes at 2:32, which one of our perennial issues, and it's one of the issues why we've wanted to rotate. Our student activities, student athletes, teacher coaches often are missing at the end of a day. If they're a coach and they're an athlete and there's an event, they get dismissed at the end of the day. The rotation means they won't always miss the same period. So presently now, if they miss an afternoon, if they're a baseball player or whatever it might be, they're always missing a portion of or all of 8th period. This will rotate it so it won't always hit the same period. And then having these 2 days, maybe by chance, will actually hit on a day where they won't miss an academic class. They might miss some time that they're trying to do something else on those afternoons, but not one of their classes. Again, that was a trade-off. It was a mindful decision of why we wanted to rotate and why we put those blocks at the end. There is another feature which you can't see by just looking, so you'll have to follow along and give me the high sign when I'm going into too much detail. But a student will have his science lab on a double period of science on one of these 4 days. A student then will have his phys ed on 2 others. That means on one of those 4 days, every student will have a free period in their schedule. And again, that was also purposeful. There is not a class that only meets 1 period out of 6. There is nothing you can put in that schedule. So you will be free. Every student will be free 1 period, 1 44-minute block out of a 6-day cycle. That's been talked about for a while. Can we do that? Should we do that? How would we do that? This rotation accomplishes that. It gives that free period. It's the time students were saying, I just need time to do my homework, but they don't want to take a free period and miss an academic class. So they'll be able to, if they choose to, carry the same academic load, but they're still going to have a free period in their schedule at least once out of a 6-day cycle. The Tiger time, we wanted to put a clever name to that, which I'm not sure if that's clever or cute, and we wanted to put some purpose to it. It is flexible time. It is time that it might go in a direction that I'm not even thinking about yet, but we wanted to give some idea and some structure to it. So if you think about the word tiger, the T could stand for tutoring, right? So you say, what do I do on tiger time in the afternoon on an E day? Well, you've got 44 minutes that you can get tutoring. You can go to our idea center, you can find your teacher, you can find a friend, we can get a university tutor, however it might be, but T and tiger could stand for tutoring. Get some help, get your homework done. The I, we've played with this, it could be I for innovation, right? Create something, it's flexible time. If you're in the robotics club and you're building something, if in one of the other groups and you're trying to build something, create something, in the improv group and you're creating something, there's time for that right there in the day. G is for gather, could be for gather. Come together as a group, find your friends, find your study cohort. If we continue to think about this and we start restructuring and thinking about how other ways to build community, it could be advisory time, right? It could be time where we come together and gather. E, I had that on the end of the word create. Again, we want to create space for students to experiment and do different things, so it could be E for experiment. R, I was thinking about reflection, having a time to reflect on your studies, to have a journal, electronic journal, whatever it might be. I met with a couple of our teachers, and they were science teachers teaching research, and they said, Gary, R stands for research. So it could be research time. The point is for us to come in and say, it's a choice. You can do different things during that time, but we wanted to build it into the schedule. And then at 3:21, the day will be over, and folks will go different directions. So that's the bulk of it. So it has a few highlights, right? Later start time, the breaks, the rotating periods, a 6-day cycle where you'll have one free period every 6 days, has both short and long blocks, has time to collaborate. And I haven't stressed this, but with those longer blocks, that means every academic area now has a chance for double period. So English teachers have a chance for double period, the 78-minute block. Math teachers have that time. Everyone will have that time to go a little bit deeper, to go a little bit slower. And that's some of the feedback I heard this year when we did some practice days, that time allowed students to settle into the class and teachers to settle in and immerse themselves in it. In the 44-minute class that we have now, you're barely in. You focus and settle in for a few minutes, and then your mind starts to think about what class you have next. And so it's hard to have that sweet time in the middle where you're really in it and engaged, and the longer time provides for a little bit more time for that before you start to think about what you have to do next. I don't have to spend a lot of time on this, but just so you know, we've thought about it. We're ready for opening, 90-minute delayed opening, Mr. Cochran. If it snows, we're ready.
No snow next year.
We can do, we can release early, we can come in late. We've got a schedule for every which way it might go. Last couple of notes. I don't know how long we've had our present schedule, but it's been a while, right? 1 through 8 periods a day. We've created a new one for next year, but I don't expect it to be the schedule for the next 100 years or so. It will continue to evolve. As we continue to do the other work, as we continue to think about the building being different and how we'll use those spaces, we're then going to say, well, we're going to need different time. When we continue to work on our curriculum and instruction, when teachers, when we provide ways structurally for them to do more interdisciplinary work, then they're likely to say, well, we need different blocks of time. So that I envision the schedule continuing to evolve. I mentioned we have students working on an app for their phones. It's all interconnected. That's why it's just ongoing for everybody. Mr. Cochran mentioned that E on that space is educating all of us, the community. We've had a couple of parent workshops, and we talk about it at PTO. It's ongoing for us to think about what it means to be 21st century teachers and learners, what we want high school to look like and what we want it to be like. It can be a rat race. We know that. Higher ed knows that. Higher ed's talked about making changes. I think higher ed thinks they can't because secondary doesn't. Secondary thinks we can't make change because higher ed doesn't. And I think we all just have to keep going in those directions because we can. The line I used last year, our work has been contextual. We've been specific to Princeton High School. We haven't gone shopping and pulled something off a shelf. It's very specific to us. We've been creative. We've worked collaboratively. We've been trying to model the work that we're asking students to do. So when we talk about deeper learning, we've spent a year on this. We had to read, we had to think, we had to collaborate because we essentially presented ourselves a problem. And so we had to figure out the problem. And we did that through those steps. And then lastly, it's consequential. People do notice what Princeton High School does. And other schools in our area are looking at our later start time. Other schools are looking at the work we're trying to do to transform how we do high school. And so I believe we'll continue to be consequential in that regard. And the work goes on. That was a recent meeting in the conference room. That's Heidi Hayes-Jacobs on the video conference, working with us as we continue to talk about what we're doing now and in the future. So, thank you.
Mr. Snyder, I've seen this 3 times, and I love it. I love it. And I'm really sad that my son, well, not completely sad, but he's graduating and will not be able to take part of this because I think it's really great. I mean, I love all the switching, every day it's a different class and just the free time. I don't know, it's really creative, and I'm really excited for you guys.
Other comments?
I would like to thank you, Mr. Snyder, for coming so often to Student Achievement. We've invited you many times. As Debbie said, we've heard many iterations, and we really appreciate the initiative that you and your staff and the parents and the students and all of those engaged in the process together. It's really been collaborative, and we really appreciate that. One thing, as you say, the schedule continues to evolve. Have you thought about how you might gather input and data from students and teachers and parents as the year progresses next year?
Yes, and we'll have to do that in a couple of different ways, whether it continues to be the survey or a survey. And even this spring, there have been focus groups, and we'll continue to do focus groups and try to gather that feedback and what's working and what isn't working. I think it's important to say, right, the practice days, I think, were with teachers in mind. But some of this work is also a change for students, right? It's easy to be a student. Again, think about the furniture. When the classroom is laid out in such a way and the teacher's in the front, it's a signal to students to sit down and be relatively passive in your learning. And some of what we're asking is for students to be active in their learning, and so presenting them with a problem, giving them a situation to work on and to figure some things out and not tell them everything along the way can be different, can be challenging. So we'll have to hear that feedback as well. As I think about teachers needing professional development, we might need student development, right, to think about how they're going to adapt to some of the changes.
Gary, I have to say that your leadership and the way that you've done this and modeling the problem-based learning and taking the teachers out of the box and looking at the classroom walls and without walls. You've said that. You and I have been together, I guess, since 2005. And the evolution that I've seen and the work that's going on and talking to teachers about this and the excitement that they have, it's contagious. Just to hear it and to see you present it. I've only seen it twice, so I'm jealous. I've only seen it twice because I see it at the board meetings and not at the other meetings. But wow, this is really exciting. It takes away I guess I don't want to use the word of the what's the word I'm looking for, Gary? Doing the same thing, the monotony of every day first period being the same thing. If you have a child, and I won't say which one of my children, but if you have a child that is really, really struggles to get to first period on time, they won't always struggle to get to the same first period on time. And if you have a child that's, just saying, And if you have a child that is pulled out eighth period regularly, they're not pulled out of the same eighth period. There's so many positive things. Having that free time, I think, and just listening the way you are. And I just see such a great pep in your step. I'm just very excited about all this. Thank you so much.
We've had fun, mostly. But I should also say thank you to the board. We've taken risks. We've stepped out of the box. We've looked at things that are different, and teachers have done that. I've asked them to try, on these practice days, I've asked them to try different things, and teachers have. And that's not easy to do. When you have a way of doing it and it has proven to be successful, we don't get that ranking in the U.S. News for nothing, right? And then it's like, well, yes, but we want to do it a little bit differently. We want to do it better. We want to go deeper with that learning. So I've asked teachers to do things differently, to take some risk. And so I appreciate the board's support in us doing that, and the community, and as well, because that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to make a change and trying to make a difference, and that does mean taking a risk, and means not everything we do will be perfect, and we'll have to go back to the drawing board and make adjustments.
Thank you, Gary. Keep taking those risks. This is worth it. Thank you very much.
One more question, Gary. Hey, Gary, can I ask you a quick question? Is there any way you could track this somehow as to improvements? I think I mentioned this last time you presented. Somehow put it as a journal article, and then with the finance hat on, the Princeton package, a licensed, something you could license to other school districts, a complete package. Maybe the kids that are working on the apps could also be working on the big copyrighted book that you would hand out and take to other school districts for a nominal fee. So seriously, you ought to think about seeing if you can collect the data to show that it works, put it into a journal article, and see if you can put something like you say, this wasn't off the shelf, and if it works here and we're in U.S. News and World Reports, maybe people would want to buy something from an award-winning school district, and they might buy it with a check.
I will say that when the Tri-States evaluators were here last week, we had superintendents and supervisors from other districts around the state, and they were very impressed with the schedule and very jealous of what we were putting in place. And Gary, I want to thank you again for your leadership and the work that your staff did to really listen to student voices and to listen to each other, to take risks and to model innovation, as you had said, Evelyn. And I loved the way in which you thought so comprehensively about we just can't change time without also changing instruction and without also looking at how we're using our space. And the three of those coming together, as you say, it's a complicated and heavy lift, and I think you and your staff have managed it really well, and we look forward to supporting you as you move ahead. So thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, thanks again, Gary. And with that, we'll move to item G, which is the harassment, intimidation, and bullying report. Do we need a motion for that, Ms. Kennedy? Yeah. A motion and a second, and this is consent. So for those of you who haven't been here before, we tend to take items that can be voted on all at once and bundle them up at the end rather than have lots of roll call votes, which tend to be very tedious. So
It
is a consent, so we don't need a first and second. So, so that gets us to item H, which is a public comment period. All right, folks, so I know a lot of you who want to talk tonight. We have 25 people who want to talk. At 2 minutes each, that's almost an hour. And so I think we need to limit it to 2 minutes each so that, our meeting doesn't go all night. If it goes all night, it kind of loses its power as a meeting for people to watch. So if I can ask that you keep your comments to 2 minutes. I also, again, would like to just point out in my almost 6 years on the board, we've had very contentious issues that we talked about. And we mainly did it in a fairly civil and respectful way. We all live in a community, and we tend to be mindful of that. Also, in my 6 years, we have never talked about a child or a group of children in a public meeting, and I hope we can keep that the same way tonight. We're all parents, and we're here to protect the children of this community above all. And with that in mind, and also with Mr. Snyder's comments, many people know I'm a big advocate for less homework. I remember our last Challenge Success Survey, kids do about an average of 3 hours of homework a night at the high school, but there are some people who are working as many as 5 to 6 hours on their homework every night. So I am mindful of that, and as I said in a meeting just not recently, I hope that in the future, we let all the high school kids come last because they've got nothing else to do. But for now, I would like to ask that our high school kids, just so that we give them the option if they have other things to do tonight, that they go first. And so I recognize a few names on here as high school students, and I'm going to ask you to go first. If there's anyone else who's a high school student that I don't recognize, you'd like to go first, simply raise your hand and we'll put you up, we'll get you up there. And yes, so if you'd just like to come up, and by the other thing that I'll do, just so you know, I'll let you know who's coming up next so that you can prepare yourself and like who's on deck, okay? But let's see if we can keep this, if we all keep it to 2 minutes, it'll be about an hour of public comment. So let's see if we can all respect each other's time and go about 2 minutes each.
You want to high sign at 30 seconds?
Yeah, I also give you, sort of a little warning when you're at a minute 30, so you know. And with that, I think just looking at our list, the first high school student that I recognize is Julie Rubin. Sorry, not Julie Rubin, Risa Rubin Stankiewicz. If you'd like to come forward. Again, when you do come forward, just if you can identify yourself, where you live, and off you go.
All right, hello everybody. My name is Raisa, and I'm a sophomore at Princeton High School. So forgive me, I did not actually have too much of a chance to prepare, so forgive me if this is kind of impromptu. But I just wanted to speak again tonight very briefly about the Cranberry-Princeton relationship. So we had actually, for everybody here who's not a board meeting junkie, surprise, surprise, there is a really wonderful video where that goes much more in depth and explains this. But just really quickly to review a couple of really important things I think we need to keep in mind. One is the fact that the funds for tuition that we receive from Cranberry are the second largest item in our operating budget, and that we basically cannot do without this. It would be very, very difficult to do without it. Second of all, that from a legal standpoint, we have, in order to break it off, from a legal standpoint, it would be very, very. First of all, we cannot break it off over an issue of overcrowding, and even if we did, we have not had a successful thing where a receiving district has tried to break off from a sending district. It has been very, very rarely successful. So, as I said, the lawyer can explain it much better than I can. But I think that what we really need to keep in mind with all of this is that these are members of our community. They are as much members of our community as I am. There is nothing that distinguishes me from any of them because I was lucky enough to be born, because I was able to, because I was
Ma'am.
born in Princeton.
Please let the speaker speak. That's just a basic civility. And by the way, Risa, you're at your 2 minute warning, so we have to cut you
Okay.
off.
Okay, no.
Okay,
Raisa,
thank
please
you very
finish.
much.
Yeah,
Okay.
thanks. You gotta finish up.
Please, are you finished?
I'll finish up right now. Thank you so much. Thank you for the time.
Thank you.
Thank you, Risa. Okay, next, Samuel Gonzalez. I believe you're also a high school student, if you'd like to come up and speak. And just so you know, I said I'd tell you who's on deck, Callum Binney, after that. So Samuel, I don't know if you're out there, but if you'd like to speak. You don't have to. If you don't want to, you don't have to. It's up to you. Sure, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So Callum, it's your turn, and then after that will be Brian McDonald on deck, unless there's another high school student.
Okay. So It's been almost a year and a half since the high school first took the Stanford Success Survey, which told us that around half of the students took a day off from school in the last 30 days for mental health reasons. It's not a problem or an issue, it's a crisis. I'm all for a revamped schedule, but in all honesty, is that all you have? I mean, we're not dealing, I'm all for a schedule that better helps and better identifies the needs of students, but to put things in clear terms, we're not dealing with bad days or stressful schedules. We're dealing with problems of suicide. And the thing is that I understand that a schedule, it looks appealing, and I do agree that there are merits to this schedule. But the problem is, and I feel like this is a problem that's really not covered, is that it's not necessarily just wellness. It's really mental health, and that students are seriously having struggles in school that go beyond just not having trouble in first period and just being able to get into the classes and having an immersive class time. So, and for that, I would like to say that really we can applaud the schedule, but there is so much more that the Stanford Success Survey covers. There's so many more elements of this crisis I feel like we're not really covering that go way deeper than just missing classes and not having an immersive enough time. And secondly, as far as Cranberry goes, I understand it's a contentious issue, and I understand I do not pay taxes in Princeton, but my parents do. And in Princeton, absolutely, I'm a Princeton student.
It's 30 seconds.
CP since kindergarten. Sorry. And you may see dollar signs, but I see classmates, I see teammates, I see friends, and I see a community of students, regardless of where they're from, be it Riverside, be it Community Park, be it Johnson Park, be it Cranberry Middle School. We are all at the same school, and we are all in the same school, and we all should be there. And ma'am, I got in trouble in English class today for interrupting. This is basic. So please, everyone in that school is just the same as another student, and no one is more deserving of the great education at Princeton High School. Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you, Colin. Yeah. Okay, next. No, Okay, but I will ask that the audience stop disrupting and let everyone give their time. You're not entitled to take over the entire meeting. So you have your time if you signed up and you can speak. Is Brian McDonald here? Okay, you're next. And then on deck will be Mary Clerman. And I think, rather than disturb you with an alarm, maybe, Betsy, if you can wave something at 30 seconds.
At 30 seconds left, I'm going to hold this
Yeah.
orange. Unless someone has anything to
I think this is about 2.5 minutes. So
Okay.
that's okay. Anyway, thank you all for your commitment to our schools and our community, and thanks for all the hard work that you do. I'm Brian McDonald. I've been a resident for 21 years. My wife and I have 3 wonderful children, all born here, all attended our public schools, 2 in college, 1 completing 9th grade, hopefully successfully. And I speak as a former municipal finance professional and 7-year member of the town's Citizens Finance Committee, which I no longer serve on. I'm here tonight to speak in favor of renewing the send-receive relationship with Cranberry for 3 reasons. The first is a legal one, but I'm going to skip that in the interest of time and with the assumption that many other people will cover that topic. The second point I want to, and the one I want to emphasize most, is that the Cranberry relationship is a good deal financially for the district, and the loss of revenue through the termination of the relationship with Cranberry would have significant negative consequences for our students and our taxpayers. This is true today, and under any realistic scenario, it will be true if the contemplated referendum passes as well. Let me share with you how I reached this conclusion. I've reviewed the financial analyses performed by the district and also by citizens who oppose or question the renewal of the relationship. In my opinion, all of these analyses are flawed in various ways, and neither side presents a full picture that factors in both operating costs and capital costs and the potential impact of the $56 million portion of the contemplated referendum that represents the estimated cost of work for the high school. I started with average per student costs, which some people point to, But this is a rabbit hole it is best not to go down. There's a tremendous amount of statewide averaging that does not reflect district by district or school by school costs. It's very misleading, and it's very hard to point to that and say anything accurate. It's also not the best way to understand the full financial picture. And that requires understanding a critical point, which is that public education generally has high fixed costs and variable costs that do not move linearly, but rather in steps when various thresholds are reached. So as a former municipal finance guy, I developed my own model. And then the last day I asked two very smart people to stress test it. I think it still needs work, but it's very clear, at least to me, that under any set of realistic assumptions with no referendum, the relationship with Cranberry is overwhelmingly positive for Princeton taxpayers and has been for 28 years. And with
Brian,
the
I'm sorry, I got to stop you just to be fair to people.
Okay.
But so if you want to just wrap up with a sentence, I will give everyone the courtesy
Sure.
of doing that.
So what I'd like to do, with your permission, is share the model with the board and the administration, and hopefully put some better district data in it than I've been able to gather. I think it would help create a more accurate, more holistic conversation on the topic from a financial perspective.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next, Mary Clerman. And just so you know, on deck is Shenwei Zhao.
Hi, Mary Clerman, Harris Road. I'm pleased to hear the attention to specific details and accurate reporting. It's really important that we not get carried away emotionally here. The facts are what really count. I just want to say that we're told that the termination of the Cranberry students, the Cranberry Send-Receive Agreement, or SRA, is in the hands of the State Department of Education. But according to state regulation in New Jersey SA 18A, the local school board only has to follow an application procedure. We respectfully ask that you delay any such application until you've worked directly with the public. Voters need a course that all can understand and either accept or reject, as is their right. I cede the balance of any time to Joel Schwartz. Thank you.
Thank you. And next is Mr. Zhao. And if you can just say where you're from and just if you have children in the school.
Yeah, sure. I have children in school, and I live in Prospect Avenue. Just further to clarify Mary's point, I believe this board has the ability to decide this. So we actually contact the mayor and the mayor office and the council. They are basically saying, I quote, "The Princeton School Board, which is the separate governing body directly elected by the Princeton voters, has direct control over the Cranberry decision," end quote. So it is clear that the Cranberry contract is in your hand, only in your hand. So my point is, we're not asking you to end it. We're asking you to give us more time as a city in this town to think about it, right? There are maybe thousands of people have different opinions than yours. So with that, I cede my time to Joe Soares. Thank you.
Okay, and sorry I didn't give you a heads up, but Charlotte O'Connell is next, followed by John Chen. If you want to do it in reverse, Mr. Chen, you're ready to go, then fine, it's fine either way.
Jan Chen, live in Idle Farm, and I have kids in public school as well. With regard to the Princeton High School capacity, the Cranberry Send-Receive Agreement is almost 30 years old, conceived when the school district is under-enrolled. Now, it's over-enrolled and beyond capacity. And based on the presentation at the April 24th, I actually see that all three criteria to terminate the Cranberry Send-Receive relationship actually can be met. There's no impact on the racial composition of both districts, and there's no substantial negative financial impact and educational impact to both districts. And most importantly, I think the onus is not on the Princeton district to find an alternative school for Cranberry district. And lastly, I just want to point out to a lot of high school students that even if we let the Cranberry Send-Receive relationship expire, you get to keep your friends, you get to keep your teammates, because they get to stay in the school if they are already enrolled. So I see the rest of the time to Joe Schwartz. Thanks.
Okay, Charlotte O'Connell is next. And then Mr. Schwartz is next, and Mr. Schwartz, you're hitting the jackpot here. You're up to about 5 minutes, so.
Charlotte O'Connell, 116 Patton Avenue. One of the issues that is required in the send-receive agreement if it's terminated is that the racial balance must be considered. Looking at Princeton and Cranberry, the separation, ending of this receive agreement would not affect the racial balance in the area. In fact, it would actually improve as a percentage. So I respectfully request that we discontinue the send-receive agreement, and I cede the rest of my time to Joel Schwartz.
Okay, Mr. Schwartz, you just say where you're from, whether you have kids in the school, and you're up to about 6.5 minutes now, so.
Great. Mr. President, several people who are lined up to speak after me have said if I need a few more minutes, they're willing to cede their time. I'd like to get through my presentation. It's not going to be very long. Joel Schwartz, live on Armour Road. My wife, Corinne O'Hara, who's here, and I have lived in Princeton for 38 years. Our 2 daughters attended Littlebrook and JW. Before I get into the details, we all know that PHS needs work, and we all know that sooner or later, PHS will need expansion. The questions before us are really when and how big of an expansion. Everyone in this community is ready to invest in PHS. It's a question of how much, how soon, and why. The board has said that the sending-receiving agreement should be renewed for 3 reasons: dollars, demographics, and difficulty. Dollars. In the 2017-2018 school year, Cranberry paid tuition to PPS based on 280 students times approximately $17,000 per student, which brings you to $4.8 million. Everyone now understands that $4.8 million is not a relevant number. Rather, according to the board, $3.6 million is the relevant number because, based on the principle of marginal costs, Princeton schools receive $3.6 million annually in net income after paying the marginal cost of educating 200 Cranberry students. In other words, the position of the board, as expressed in writing, has been having paid for the costs of teachers, books, electricity, etc., that are incurred to educate the 1,300 resident Princeton students. The marginal cost to educate the 280 Cranberry students is only 25% of what it costs to educate the first 1,300 Princeton students who actually live here. With due respect to the board, you said that your calculation of marginal cost shows that extending their SRA makes sense. You've presented as a really great deal for us. However, you have not made the case why 25% is a valid number for calculating those marginal costs as opposed to 35% or 50% or some other marginal cost. If your representation of the marginal cost is not on solid ground, then your financial reasons for extending the SRA are not on solid ground either. Most recently, at the April 24th board meeting, the board said in essence that $2.8 million, not $3.6 million, is in fact the net income after paying the marginal cost of educating the Cranberry students. Why the change? $3.6 million at that meeting, well, $3.6 million, as expressed previously, is based on the 280 Cranberry students enrolled today. $2.8 million, as expressed by the board at the April 24th meeting, is based on the 220 Cranberry students who apparently will be enrolled a few years from now. Fewer Cranberry students equals less dollars for Princeton. But regardless of what the actual dollar amount is, the actual departure of 200-plus Cranberry students will result in an actual loss of revenue, whether it was $1 million or $3 million or some number in between. Whatever the amount is, however, it's going to be phased in incrementally over a 4-year period, beginning 3 years from now. In short, we have time to prepare for this. If the smart people on the board have figured out how to implement, in a very compressed time frame, a $130 million referendum, I believe they're smart enough to figure out how to deal with the amount of lost revenue I've just described. If we renew the SRA and the referendum is approved, Princeton will immediately begin to spend $60 million, not all at once, to expand PHS. $60 million borrowed for 30 years at 4.25% interest equals an annual debt service of $3.6 million. We would therefore spend $3.6 million per year for from our capital budget pocket every year for 30 years to avoid losing, best case, $2.8 million from our annual operating budget pocket. We all understand the difference between those two types of budgets. No one really knows what the Cranberry enrollments will be going forward. We certainly have no control over it. If, for whatever reason, Cranberry enrollments decline, Cranberry tuition payments to Princeton will decline. Princeton taxpayers will have to make up the difference. The board's April 24th presentation indicated that today's 280 Cranberry students might decline to 220 students within a few years. One of the demographic reports on the board's website indicated that the number of 8th grade Cranberry June graduates, i.e. the number of Cranberry entering freshmen 3 months later, might drop by 60% from 2014 to 2026. If that is true, then Cranberry tuition payments to Princeton will also drop by 60%. Demography. If the SRA is renewed, that will perpetuate the proportion of PHS overcrowding attributable to the Cranberry students, who currently represent 17% of PHS enrollment. For the next 5 years, until the year 2023, but for the presence of the Cranberry students at PHS, PHS would not be over-enrolled. Today, there are about 1,600 students at PHS, of whom 280 are from Cranberry. The net number of resident Princeton students is about 1,320. PHS capacity is 1,423 students. If there were no Cranberry students at PHS today, PHS would be under-enrolled by 100 students. I say this to illustrate the consequence of the decision made 10 years ago by people sitting here in this room grappling with this very issue to renew the SRA from 2010 until 2020. There's 4 demographic reports produced between March 2017 and June 2018. The reports contradict each other in many ways. Perhaps the last report is meant to be the report. However, the last report is 12 pages long. The first 2 reports are 48 pages and 33 pages long, respectively, and include a great deal of information that are not covered in the report, which is presumably the report. At best, this is very confusing.
So, Mr. Schwartz, you're at almost 7 minutes, so just give you a
Thank
heads
you.
up.
With all due respect, I believe that there are people who, I can sit down and wait for them. If you give me about an extra minute.
Sure, go ahead, take the minute
Thank you.
and we'll.
I appreciate that.
It'll come out in the wash.
Thank you.
As long as we
The
make
board's-
sure that it does.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Yeah.
The board's fact sheet says, quote, regardless of whether or not Cranberry students attend PHS, we would still need to build an addition at the high school. With due respect to the board, that is not a statement of fact, it's a statement of maybe, because it omits 2 very crucial things. It omits an answer to the question, when would the addition be needed? And secondly, how large should the addition be? Regarding when, if the SRA is terminated, by 2022, the number of Cranberry students who graduated in the first 2 years following termination would reduce PHS enrollment to capacity. Regarding how big, we do not yet know today the amount of housing required for our affordable housing compliance. We will know a lot more, enough to plan with a great deal of confidence 6 to 12 months from now. There is a big difference between the red bars and the green bars on the demographic charts. Red means pretty likely. Green means literally extended, which means in a practical sense, it's a best guess. We should be honest with ourselves about the level of certainty and accuracy in the green bars. It's the green bars on those charts which seem to be driving the bus. In mature communities like Princeton, meaning we have no huge vacant areas of land which could be developed, population projection charts typically have gradual slopes or gently undulating sine curves. Absent a meteor strike, the graphs of population projections generally do not have significant departures from this. However, the green bars on all the demographic charts have very steep slopes. Again, with all due respect to the board, if you ask taxpayers to spend a lot of money because of steeply sloping green bars on the chart like that, the burden of proof is on you to explain, why is this valid? Anyone who has lived in Princeton for more than 30 years remembers when both Littlebrook and Johnson Park schools were closed for a time because of under-enrollment. It was
Mr.
not a
Schwartz,
meteor
it's
strike.
been another 2 minutes, so if you can just
I'm
wrap.
just about there.
Okay.
I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thank you. It was not a meteor strike that caused the under-enrollment. It was the long, gentle curvature of demographic trends. They go up, and then they go down, and they go up, and they go down. Last D, difficulty. The board has said, in essence, it's difficult to get out of an SRA, so we should not even try. Again, due respect, if difficult were the criteria for how we deploy our energy, we would never attempt or accomplish anything. Yes, it is difficult to get out of an SRA. There are statutorily required findings which must be proven. However, that does not mean we should not try to do the right thing. So, will we need to increase the capacity of PHS? Almost certainly yes, eventually. Not tomorrow and not next year. Do we know today what the number of students is that we should plan for? With due respect to the board, we do not. Within a reasonable time frame, in the next 6 to 12 months, what we do not know now will become much more clear. I'm speaking now about demographics and affordable housing settlement. Will become much more clear, and we will be in a better position to make the best decisions for our kids and our town. To close, I have 2 requests of this board. 1, you are not obligated to vote or say or do anything about the SRA prior to the end of June 2018. So please don't. Please. Don't take any action on this until the end of June. My second ask, there is no penalty in the SRA agreement for failing to act on this prior to the end of June 2018. As my mom would have said, there's also no reason to be impolite. So please write a letter to Cranberry and send that letter to the Commissioner of Education and say, we need more time. This is hugely important and we want to get this right. I'm sure there are people who feel sincerely that the SRA is good and right and should be continued. There's also ample evidence that in our community, many people who, based on what has been presented to them thus far by the board on this, either do not understand the SRA issues or feel it should be ended.
Thank you. Now,
Please take the time to answer the community's questions. Please take the time to get this right. Thank you for your time.
Thank you again. And I would just, if you would do me a favor, so you know who's ceding time to you. So as they come up, you can just point out who gets less than 2 minutes. That would be helpful for me because I don't know who it is.
Mr. President, the 2 people raise their hands.
Okay, thank you. So, or you can, okay. So next, I didn't tell you, Kip, but, sir, you're Mr. Gonzalez. You want to step up? Go ahead. And Kip, you're up next.
Okay, so.
And if you can just identify yourself.
Okay, so this is my first time. My name is Samuel Gonzalez. I'm from Princeton High School. I'm 16, and I'm a sophomore. And so I can speak whatever issue I please. Okay.
That's correct.
So I think one of the main concerns I have with Princeton High School is that the administration is very untrustworthy. They have a lack of accommodations, lack of respect, and a lack of response from the educators. And I think one of the biggest issues I think you can change or add new programs is basically add pretty much programs for teachers, make them mandatory for them to stay at after school maybe for less than 20 or 30 minutes. So like that, more students can have more satisfying grades, and more students can pretty much get the questions they need, because some teachers don't really have the time to explain the students. And some of the and also plus the accommodations. So for me, I have IEP and I have ADHD. And also, I think one of the biggest problems is the accommodations. So what I mean about accommodations is that they don't not all classes extend their time. So for example, I take Japanese, and they have the end of the half marking period, right? And it takes about 2 weeks. The full marking period takes about, let's say, like 6 or 7 weeks, right? And I have time to finish my work until 4 weeks. And now and then I just sometimes get trouble with Japanese, and just really I don't tend to hand in all the work because I wish I had that full time, that full 7 weeks. And also the lack of teachers, meaning the teachers really don't know how to respond in certain situations, such as disruption and other circumstances. And I think that causes a big
You have a few minutes left.
Oh, okay. Yeah. And I think that causes a big problem with me because I think one of the teachers are really unfair to me because when I tell the teacher, you know, like my science teacher, that they're making a disruption, and sometimes the teachers don't do anything about it. They don't take things seriously. This makes them look like a joke.
Okay.
And
sorry, just need to wrap it up if you.
Yeah. And the administration needs to, the school administration needs to take, responsibility on bullying incident and certain reports. And yeah, that's all.
So, Mr. Gonzalez, I just wanted to say thank you, first of all, for speaking up. Our meetings are not usually this well attended or raucous. So,
Okay.
if you want to come again, it'll probably just be a
I'll
few
love to.
people.
Yeah, thank you very
Sam.
much.
Thank you.
Appreciate you.
Yeah.
you
Second of all, well, I wasn't done. So, it's brave of you to speak about your IEP and how you feel you're being treated or not being treated fairly. My son has an IEP, so I understand some of your concerns, and I want you to know it is something the board takes very seriously. And we are constantly working. Right now, one of the superintendent's goals, I say mine, but his goal is to begin a review of special education. And this year we've spent a lot of time talking about buildings and referendums and money. And there's only so much time, so we don't get to talk about kids. And so hopefully, this is something that we can put more time into. But thank you for raising the concern on behalf of all the other students who aren't as brave. And it's something that we're very well aware of and something we take very seriously. The most important thing is that all kids, are welcome in our schools and treated fairly. And so I just want you to know that we're working on that.
Okay.
And I'm sorry that this is your experience.
Yes, yeah, it's very unfortunate that the school has to violate the New Jersey state law for my accommodation. So yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Really appreciate your thoughts. Okay, Kip, you're up next, and next after that is Ralph Perry.
I'm Kip Cherry from Dempsey Avenue. I don't have kids who are in the school. I was in the school, all the way from kindergarten through high school, and then I left Princeton to seek my fortune, and I came back in 2000. I want to point out that West Windsor and Montgomery both sent their kids to Princeton High School when I was there. So, there is an evolution. It's not as though some kind of a change is the end of the world. There are reasons for change sometimes. And I sent you all an email for your further cogitation, much more detail. But I think this might be the right time to actually think about changing the boundaries of the school district in connection with West Windsor. West Windsor is sustaining tremendous growth and has tremendous open space. We don't have very much open space left, and even though we're getting some growth, we're not going to have anything near what West Windsor is going to be having. So there might be some real benefits to us in doing that, and I just think that this is the time, if we were to do it, to think about that. And the other part of that would be then possibly that Cranberry would then become part of the school district for West Windsor. So we would move our boundary over towards Route 1, maybe all the way to Route 1, maybe beyond it. And at the same time, Cranberry would then. So I think it's time to really think deeply about where we're going, because this is the time for change. And I think it's time to step back. We're all kind of excited and in a tizzy. We're all very worried about increases in taxes. We're worried about whether this change is going to be good for the kids. We're worried about the future of our town and what it looks like. And so this is the time to maybe take a breath and say, well, what if we did something really different, and maybe it would be better for all of us. So I just want to put that idea out for you. Thanks.
Hi, my name is Ralph Perry. I live on Random Road, and I really came here to just make a very short plea. First thing is postpone the Cranberry contract for at least after the referendum. There is no reason to being in rush on this. The contract is still good for 2 years, and we have no advantage of getting it. I read in the paper that you are negotiating with Cranberry, and I think you are negotiating with the wrong people. You should negotiate with the commissioner in Trenton. He is the one who decides how much money is Cranberry going to pay. I'm all for Cranberry sending their kids over here, but they should pay their fair share. In the statutes that have been put together 30 years ago, there isn't $1 sign in there. The dollars are being determined today by the commissioner. Talk to him. Explain to him what he's doing to Princeton. Because if you overload Princeton with too many school taxes, the middle class in Princeton is going to get up and leave. And I will not get into that detail. That's the first thing. The second thing is that you should postpone the referendum for 1 year and go back to the drawing board and do two things. Number one, get new financial advisors, because the numbers you have come up so far are bad numbers. I pointed it out to your people 4 weeks ago, and all I'm getting answers is, you will hear from us. That's not the point. And the last thing I just want to say is, the $4.8 million that Cranberry is paying, that you say is a great part of the budget, is a very bad number and touches to the point which is very important. That is your credibility. 280 students, and I'm not going to go into whether 220 or not, need somewhere between 12 and 15 teachers. They need nurses. They need other help in the school. You got to pay teachers' salary. You got to pay Social Security for the teachers. You got to pay their medical expenses. You got to pay their medical insurance. You got to pay all kind of things. By the time you get through with that, you are paying out more than $2 million out of the $4.8 million. So you really don't have $4.8 million. That comes in over here. $2 million go out there.
Thank you, Mr. Perry. You're over 3 minutes now, so thank you.
Now, the other, can I just say?
I've been tough on the kids. I've got to be tough on the adults. So I'm sorry.
Okay,
Yeah.
I'll get off that. I'll just say postpone everything, because your
you.
credibility is at stake. That's all I can say.
Thank you.
If you allow me to quote, I want to read you something. Can I have that? Take 30 seconds. This is from the speech to the graduating class of last year's Princeton University by the president of Princeton.
I've just got to tell you, I've got to give Cal and Benny another minute now.
It's one paragraph.
Yeah.
It says in here, the art of disagreement requires listening to the views of others and considering whether one's own views might need to change. It also requires that we cultivate the human relationship and the trust that allows us to bridge differences and learn from one another.
Thank you.
I'm sorry to tell you, as far as I'm concerned, you have none of this right now in Princeton.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay,
Hi.
If you just identify yourself and say who you are.
My name is Alexi Asmus. I'd like to say a few things. One thing is, when I hear boards telling me that the lawyer says they can't do it, my red warning light goes on. There are gray areas in the law. There are also different lawyers. I also think that's an easy way to say we want to do it our way and we don't want to discuss. So I'm not sure. It may be clear-cut legally, but I need more information than the board says that their lawyer told them they can't do that. This is in regards to the Cranberry. The other thing I'd like to say is that, again, I haven't looked at Brian McDonald's numbers and all your numbers. But I do think when you look at $60 million to expand the high school over 30 years, even if you're not paying any interest, that's $2 million a year. And so that is costing a lot of money. The second thing I'd like to say is that when you commit to receiving Cranberry students, you commit to receiving all the growth in Cranberry students that there will be if there's great building growth. And the sending district does not pay for capital costs. So in the big picture, it's really not fair for the receiving district. If you have hundreds and hundreds of students, that means that we are paying to build a high school for another community in the big picture. The last thing I'd like to say, how many minutes? 30 seconds. Is that I'm not completely clear that our education is going to be better with the so-called 21st century learning. And when I was a professor at Polytechnic University, I oversaw a redo of their humanities curriculum. We went back to the 1950s, and we looked at what the kids there were learning. They were immigrant kids, they were disadvantaged kids. The level of their reading and writing comprehension in the 1950s in that college is much higher than that college is doing now. There was all sorts of new ideas in education in the 60s, but kids did not write as well, they did not read as complicated texts. And what you can do most for the disadvantaged kids in this school district is make sure they read and write very, very well and that they can do mathematics. And I really think you should focus on that because when they get out of the school, that's what they need.
Thank you. Okay, sorry I didn't warn you, Mr. Madison, but up next is Peter Madison, and then after that, Adam Bierman. Your seat. Oh, thank you. You're okay. Thank you very much. Then after that is Kara Marcano. Pardon? Okay, thank you.
Peter Madison, Snowden Lane. I do not have kids in the school system, but I have been a resident here for 40 years. A few concerns we have is, one, the viability and cost of this open concept. But I'm not an expert on that, so I'll defer on that. I do have a concern that we're spending $1.75 million for a parking lot when, in fact, there's lots of room on River Road that I'm sure you could work out a deal with the municipality to either give you or lease to you for practically nothing. I may be wrong about this, but I also understand that $20 million of this bond issue is going for maintenance issues. And after I've been in property, real estate, construction, and facilities management for 45 years, and I can tell you that if you have to pursue a bond issue to pay for maintenance issues which you haven't properly budgeted for, or your staff is not proficient at using, then you have to look at something here. You should be using that money for, you should be budgeting for maintenance every year, not come back to us because somebody has been negligent. But the major concern I have, again, is this whole Cranberry thing, and I think, again, that you need to defer any kind of decision on this. My understanding, again, is that we have 280 students and that we are running at a deficit for those students, that we are subsidizing them to the tune of $2,000 a year, which is $560,000 a year. And secondly, they are not providing any capital contribution whatsoever to this program. And third, as someone mentioned, we don't know what's going to happen to their population, and a 10-year agreement sticks us for whatever happens to their population in terms of growth. They have more open land than we do, and they also have quite a bit of warehouse and industrial revenue from the properties that they lease to developers, which we don't benefit from. So my suggestion to you is to please defer this whole thing about Cranberry and don't commit us to 10 years without some more thought to it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Boy, that's discipline. 2 minutes on the spot. So thank you very much. And so next is, I'm sorry to not give you warning again, Corrine O'Hara. Oh, thank you. Yeah, thank you very much. So, sorry, was Kara, did you want to go, did you say, or did you want to cede your time? I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you. If you're welcome to come up if you'd like to. You just identify yourself and
Sure.
where
My
you're
name
from.
is Cara Marcano, and I live in Princeton. I don't have any children in the schools. The taxpayers, we don't support this referendum. We don't support the money coming in from Cranberry. We don't support the Cranberry arrangement. We don't support you pushing it through, that is renewing it without any input from the taxpayers. You'll be hard pressed to find a taxpayer in this town at this time who supports the Cranberry students coming into our schools at this time. So for those of us who vote here and pay taxes, it's just unfathomable that you would push through something like this arrangement with Cranberry, which is 30 years old, without taxpayer input. It's astounding. We're trying to represent democracy, representative democracy to the best of our ability to our children, and education and critical thinking, and the fact that you would take our votes and our money and not take into account what we in the community want, it's just not acceptable. It's not acceptable. The taxpayer does not support this arrangement being pushed through with Cranberry. We don't support the Cranberry deal. There's also some talk and murmuring in the town of raiding the Affordable Housing Fund to pay for some of these school costs and for some of these subsidizing the Cranberry deals and stuff. There are rumbling.
We're separate
And,
entities. We're separate entities, separate budgets, separate leadership.
That's not true. That's not true. The money flows from the taxpayer through the town to the schools.
The Board of Education has
Okay,
a
there's
budget.
talk in the town of raiding the Affordable Housing Fund
30
to pay for the school costs that you guys are talking about. And we are, if I'm understanding correctly, we do have a requirement that we have been legally obligated from the state to provide more affordable housing units in our town. We have a diversity crisis in our town. We have a socioeconomic crisis in our schools. This Cranberry arrangement makes our schools incredibly white and high income. It's segregation, okay, at the expense of Black and Latino kids and the kids of children of single parents, at the cost of socioeconomic diversity. And there are rumblings of dipping into our affordable housing fund at a time when we're being asked to create, is it 700 units? Okay, and those 700 units allow people of all incomes and backgrounds to take advantage of our schools and allow the diversity that we all say that we promote. Okay, so we obviously do not support the raiding of the Affordable Housing Fund to, bring in very wealthy people from Cranberry who are purchasing homes, in the multiple millions of dollars on our tax dollars without having to pay for school construction costs.
Ms. Marcano, you're over time now.
Thanks, Patrick. The other issue I just wanted to say is thanks, Patrick. I don't understand why there is an app and why these cell phones are permitted in the high school during the school day. In other words, I think you guys have some great ideas. I just want to say thank you so much for working on the student schedule and letting the kids come in a little bit later. That's a beautiful idea. That must be something that you really had to fight for, and we really respect that you're worried about our kids. And I think there's some great innovations in there. I don't understand why they're all on a cell phone, even during this meeting. During the school day, I don't understand why the schedule needs to be on an app and why they're all on their phones. And I think we really need to look hard at the amount of time they're spending on these phones and the bullying and the behavior that's going on these phones. I don't think the kids need a cell phone in high school, and I certainly don't think the app should be part of that said, I appreciate what you're trying to do, let the kids rest and to have mental health.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you very much. Okay, next, sorry again, no warning, but Patrick Simon, and just so I do warn the next person, Kristen Suazo next. So, Mr. Simon, if you're nearby.
Hi, my name is Patrick Simon. I live on Harriet Drive in Princeton. I do not have children in the school system. I am very much in favor of robust investment in public education. With respect to the Cranberry Agreement, I agree with at least part of what Brian McDonald said earlier, which is that the analysis that's been presented to date has been incomplete and insufficient to make the case that it's making. And I think we can and should, as a community, do better. Brian has shared his analysis with me. I'm actually one of the people he's vetted it with. I don't quite draw the same conclusions he does yet. That's not terribly surprising. Different people, even when they're looking at the same facts, may draw different conclusions, and that's something we all should expect and respect. The conclusion I would draw at this point, though, is please do buy yourself enough time to actually improve the review of the agreement and the implications of it before moving forward with it. And please find a way to do that. And also, I would ask that you please take advantage of the expertise within the town. There are people who are volunteering their time to essentially help with that. We don't expect you to be experts in municipal, or I'm sorry, school district finance. It's incredibly complex. One of the things that I did actually in advance of Mr. Sullivan's suggestion and email to one of the other people in the audience today was to actually go back and review the April 24th slides. Thank you, 20 seconds. Thank you. And I can simply tell you there's significant errors in some of those slides that it would be helpful to draw on expertise so that you actually don't make those errors. It leads to an appearance to the skeptical public as if the fix is in. I don't believe that's the case. You're working in good faith. The people who are opposing it are also reviewing it in good faith. And I think that we should be trying to listen to each other respectfully. But I think the conclusion is correct. You do need some more time to get the analysis, to understand fully the implications of the agreement, at least especially the financial ones. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you, Mr. Simon. And just before, Ms. Suazo, if you come up, I usually say this in board meetings, and it's been pretty true tonight anyway, that this public comment is really for you to make a comment to the community and to the board. It's not a Q&A. But I do want to mention that some of the board members have offered to attend a Q&A at a different time. We have a Meet the Board session scheduled for June 7th. 8:30. At 8:30 a.m.? A.m. Yep. So it'll go till 8:30 p.m., I think.
No.
And
Till 10 a.m.
And
8:30 to 10.
And so you're welcome to come, Q&A. And you're right, Mr. Simon, the fix is not in on, we are all Princeton taxpayers as well. We don't have an interest in, we don't own land in Cranberry or something. We're not Cranberry. We have a Cranberry board rep, but that's it. And so we're trying to come to the right answer here. We rely on the opinions of our council and our experts. We rely on advice from people like you. So we're listening, and we'll come to the best answer that we can come to. I just want to assure you of that. We don't have an agenda one way or the other, but we do want to come to the best answer for the kids. We're all here, we believe, for the best interest of the children that we serve. So in that spirit, appreciate all the comments so far, and they all have been thoughtful and respectful, and I appreciate that too. So that was my 2 minutes, I guess. So again, Ms. Suazo, if you want to step up, you're welcome to.
Thank you. My name
And then
is
Julia Rubin is on deck. Thanks.
Thank you. My name is Kristen Suazo, and I have 2 children in the public schools, and I live on Prospect Avenue. First of all, I want to thank you, all of you, for all of the time and effort and what appears to be a very challenging job from my observation. So thank you for your sincerity, your approach to this, and serving our community. It is appreciated by people in this room and so many people who can't come. So thank you so much. I just want to say that I am a taxpayer, public school parent, and I support continuing the relationship with Cranberry, not because I believe that it benefits our district financially, as Brian McDonald has uncovered with his analysis, as well as some of the analysis that the board members have looked at. I think that were we to cancel this, our budgets would be our operating budget would be significantly, just drastically decimated in an already tight budget year that would really cause significant problems to our programs, our activities, and would be very challenging to continue the high excellence that we have experienced and come to expect at Princeton. So I will end right here and give back you all whatever remaining time I have.
Thank you very much. Okay, Julia, and then next is Christian Martin.
Oh.
No? Oh, anyway, if Christian Martin not going, then next would be Dr. Sharma.
Okay. I live at 360 Jefferson Road, and my daughter is the one who spoke first. And she attends Princeton High School. I'm going to keep this really short. I'd love to see the rest of my time to Brian, actually, so he could finish. But I know that you guys know all the arguments, and I think they're terrific arguments. I love that you're going to use the Q&A. I would just encourage you to also do something in the evening. I don't want you to delay the vote. I am very supportive of the Cranberry arrangement, but obviously people still have questions, and I think it's great that you're making time to answer them. What I mostly wanted to do was just say, for any Cranberry people who are watching, and for Evelyn, please know you are really wanted in our schools, and I am sorry for the anger and the misinformation, or just, honest disagreements. Please don't take that in any way as a rejection of your children, because we really want them here. They bring so much to our schools, and, sometimes when things are financially stressful, people just forget that. So please just know that. And I'll cede my time to Brian, if he's still here.
Thank you. We'll get him back here. No, I think he had to leave. But thank you, Julia. And so Christian Martin is not going. Okay, then thank you. So so Dr. Sharma next, and then followed by John McCann.
Thank you. My name is Surinder Sharma. I don't have any kids in high school at this point. My kids went to Princeton Day School. But I'm very proud of the high school kids, and I've been actually mentoring them for a new technology. I just wanted to let you know we are trying to develop a technology using drones and cameras, so we can use it for many of the issues that we are facing today, like whether it's a tree issue or maybe even in future that could be for disasters and so on and so forth. I wanted to let you know as a good citizen and as a resident, and also wanted to know we all here to support the kids in proper education so they can learn properly. Having said that, but at the same time, I'm also representing, and being a resident, I'm also a taxpayer. So when it comes to the taxpayers, you have to kind of look at how do you spend taxpayers' money in the most wisest way. And my mantra and being a yogi is always think through, have a good project management plan, share facilities, share services, so we can have the most cost-effective approach. I was keeping a tally of like who's pro and who's cons. We have a great community. We want to stay united. I really mean it, because if we work together, we can achieve everything. So today, and this is not something I said it today, but I said it a few weeks back, I said, I will start a fund, and I will promise I will raise $1 million for equity, diversity, and unity. And that fund could be used for school purposes, for people who are going to be in affordable housing. We need to get rid of the problem. People think about we need the affordable housing, but we don't think about what the root cause is. The root cause is the economic disparity. It's the poverty. We need to train those people who need these affordable housing so we can get rid of the need for the affordable housing. So it's the same thing. Yes, we need a great education system so our kids can learn. And I know I was a student until last year. I did my PhD. So I understand the value of knowledge. And what I'm trying to say, yes, I will start a fund. And I know I talked to Beth, and Beth I have great respect for her. But under certain conditions, I will be the champion of that kind of fund so that we can be united, so we could bring our people together. Because yes, there are a lot of people who are financially struggling. We need to help them. We have a lot of people who are on affordable housing and other community. We need to help them. Let's get rid of the issue, the root cause of it, then we can work together.
Thank you, sir.
To
Appreciate
me,
it.
it's united. So let's work towards that goal. So thank you for your time, and thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you very much. And next, Mr. McCann, and then after that, Phyllis Marchand, and then finally Bob Corral.
John McCann, I'm one of the co-presidents of PREA, the Teachers Union, and we're here and just wanted to get on record that as an association, we support the referendum. And in our buildings, we see it. I know certainly there's a discussion now about Cranberry and that agreement, but there's overcrowding in a lot of our buildings. We're seeing, in the buildings, we're hearing it from our teachers. And Steve, Superintendent Cochran, has worked tirelessly. He's gone through the buildings, put in the community. We've watched a lot of these presentations, and he's really getting out front of this issue. And I know he's even made changes and tried to make this more cost-effective. My hat's off to him, and certainly the board as well. I know this is a really astounding board that someone mentioned representative democracy. They represent the voters of Princeton, and they're a great reflection of this community. They're intelligent, and I certainly think you'll make wise decisions moving forward. So I want to thank you for your service to the board. So thank you.
Thanks, John, and we appreciate all that you and all the teachers do. So thank you. And with that, Phyllis Marchand, and then Mr. Carell is Dr. Carell is last.
It's been a long time since I've been at a public meeting like this.
I'm not sure you need to identify yourself, but maybe you.
My name is Phyllis Marchand, and I live on Montedale Drive, and I have 3 grown children and 8 grandchildren, and the 3 children all went to the Princeton schools. I've lived in town longer than many of you are old. I've been here 54 years, and we have a wonderful school system. We lived through the Johnson Park closing. I am here to say this is an issue that hasn't been brought up. 20 years ago, or whenever we had this agreement started, that the last time we renewed, the word sustainability was not really used. I am very concerned that we are jeopardizing our environment more than we really need to by having the Cranberry Agreement. There are many school districts much closer to Cranberry than to Princeton. The buses that come into Princeton, 3 buses a day, 3 times a day. That doesn't include the number of parents that come and drive the children after school. So I want us to think a little bit about that as just another piece in this very complicated puzzle. I also think that the capital costs is really a major issue. If I lived in Cranberry, of course I'd want my kids to come to Princeton. They get a great education. But if somebody asked me to pay for a building, a classroom, I'd say, why would I do that? It's not in my town. Why am I supporting a building that my children are going to be out of in 4 years? And nobody in my neighborhood will be able to take advantage of the improvements. So I think you never know what you may win if you don't try. And the issue of it's never been done, it's very hard to get rid of an agreement, I think that we should try, and I also hope everyone is aware of the importance of our COA numbers. And until we have them, I am willing to pay as much money as needed to build a school for the children who live here, and there are going to be a lot more. Look around the town, look at the teardowns, and look at the size of the buildings that are being built. So please remember all of this, and remember our environment and the number of trips. It's all about parking in Princeton. It's all about traffic in Princeton. Not as much as education in Princeton. So think about them all. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Dr. Carell, you're our cleanup speaker tonight.
I don't know about that. Bob Carell, I teach science at the high school. So for those of you who are wondering about whether or not we need something now at the high school, I can speak to you that as someone who teaches every day in that high school, there is not enough space in the high school right now. Try to walk through the hallways when classes are not in session, and it's like running through a sardine can. when we try to schedule classes, we are at such occupancy that teachers have to switch classrooms, not per class, but within the same class to accommodate other teachers coming in to do their labs. And if you want to know what that's like, a former teacher, Margie Linden Burns, once said, imagine serving a buffet dinner to 25 people with 4 minutes to prep the dinner, and then move and serve that same dinner somewhere else with only 4 minutes to serve it. That's what teaching in these multiple classrooms is like as a science teacher. So I want to tell you, while I may not think the current architectural plans are perfect, they are very good in my opinion, and I don't want the perfect to be the enemy of the good. And so I think we need to do something now, and it's critical. I want to change topics very dramatically here for a minute and just talk to you about something that came up this past couple of weeks with APs. I teach AP chemistry. I had 77 students on my roster. When I got my list of kids who were registered for the test, I had 82 kids. And I was like, wait a minute. That was really good. And then it turns out I heard story after story of kids in other classes, in my classes, who were self-studying for additional AP tests, tests that they did not take the class. We talk about wellness all the time, and so I went to Principal Snyder and I asked about it. And he said, well, we don't have a policy that says they can't. So I would like to refer this to the policy committee to explore whether or not this is a good idea as to whether or not we should or should not have a policy to allow our kids to take additional AP tests beyond the courses from which they are enrolled. And I'd be happy to come to the policy committee to discuss this. Thank you.
Thank you. APs is something we've talked about a lot, just so you know, over the years, and it's never really gone anywhere, but I hope that it will, which is, unless we, the adults, limit how many APs kids take, they're going to have to, they're on their own and they're competing with each other, which is a terrible thing. As Mr. Cochran said earlier, kids don't learn well when they're under extreme stress. So it's up to the adults, in my opinion, to limit and then go to the higher education institutions and say, this is what we do. This is the limits around here. And this student took the limit and that's it. So, I think that we need a little bit of leadership there, in my opinion, and I hope someday we can do that. It's the first time I've ever heard that story. Very interesting. So
Actually, Pat, that does happen, especially in foreign language, when students can't take the AP foreign language class and they take, say, French cinema. They can sit for the AP French test or the AP Spanish test. If they're at the high enough level, they're allowed to take that test.
Okay. All right. So, again, I'd like to thank everyone for all your comments tonight, and again, reiterate that we are listening to what people are saying, and we do want there to be a forum, which is not necessarily this forum, for a real dialogue between the board and people. And so it is June 7th at 8:30 a.m. And, someone made a suggestion, maybe we do a PM one at some point. That we're totally open to that.
We've done it in the past.
We have. So we'll have to plan that out and notify and communicate that. But again, we appreciate everything you have said. We appreciate all the work that many of you have put into preparing your comments and the thoughtfulness and civility with which most of you gave those comments. So we appreciate all of that. And now just a bit of good news and bad news. Good news is, if you'd like and you want to go to bed tonight or spend time with your family, you're welcome to leave. The rest of this meeting is going to be about more business issues. Also, bad news is we have to stay till it's done. But if you'd like to stay, of course, you're welcome to stay. But thank you all for coming tonight. And with that, we'll move on to item I, which is the board committee reports. And as usual, we start with our student board rep, which is tonight is it looks like just Amy Wang.
All right, so hello. We have survived our final season of AP exams as seniors, which ended just this Friday. So following up from the conversation we had at the last meeting, Brian and I wanted to release a survey to sophomore, junior, and senior students surrounding the topic of AP exams, having just gone through them. So we've created a digital survey to be completed online through the class Facebook groups, and are also preparing to distribute a physical survey in homerooms next Wednesday to those classes, and we'll report the results to you afterwards. We just wanted to get your thoughts on some of the questions that we have planned on AP exams, and to see if there's anything else that you would want to see answered by the students. So as of right now, the ones that we're including are as follows: first, your grade; How many AP exams did you take, if any at all? How stressful did you find your AP exams, with 1 being not stressful, 5 being very stressful? Where did most of your preparation come from? 1 being mostly on your own, and 5 being mostly in class? How meaningful did you find the content of the AP exam? 1 being not very meaningful, 5 being very meaningful. How meaningful did you find the content of the AP class? 1 being not very meaningful, 5 very. Do you plan to use AP credit for college? Yes, no, unsure. And do you have any additional thoughts you'd want to share with us? As for upcoming event updates, again, the PHS Alumni Panel will be on June 13th and will feature 5 alumni from the class of 1984, 1996, 2004, 2003, and 2009. We really hope that the board members will be there. Another event that we'd also like to alert the board of is Straight Talk, a student's narrative on adversity and resilience presented by Minding Your Mind. This event was planned by members of the community representing Corner House, Princeton University, HUN, PDS, PHS, Stewart, and Trinity Counseling, and the Princeton municipality, with input from students from PHS. So Minding Your Mind's primary objective is to provide mental health education to young adults, their teachers, their parents, and school administrators to reduce the stigma and destructive behaviors often associated with mental health issues. Through a former student's story highlighting the signs and symptoms of and following up from a program facilitator, the event is intended to bring greater awareness of and conversations on mental and emotional well-being. The event will be on Tuesday, the 29th, May 29th, from 7 until 9 p.m. in the main meeting room at Witherspoon Hall, 400 Witherspoon Street. And this event is open and free to the public. Thank you for your time.
Amy, could I just ask a question? Did you say you the AP questionnaire has gone out?
It has not gone out yet. We just wanted your thoughts on it before sending it.
Well, I
Yeah.
was wondering, given Dr. Krell's comments, if we could add a question that asks if a student took any exams, AP exams, great, that they did not take the course for at the high school. I think having that data might be really interesting and helpful to us. I don't know if there's a way for them to quantify the number they took and the number of those which they studied for in courses at PHS.
Yeah,
So
we
if
can
it's-
definitely.
That would be great. Thank you very much.
Is there a question, Amy, about why you're taking these APs? Like, what's your motivation? Is it because you want, like, high-level learning and only an AP will do that for you? Or is it for it to build your resume or some other, I mean, it should be open answer, but I'd like to know why people are doing it.
And you do have a question regarding AP credit, so that could be one of the answers to the question. So
Okay.
the reasons for taking those.
Oh,
yes.
right, if you have to do multiple choice, of course, one of the answers would be to save money in college, maybe, right, to, you know, if you get, feel you get AP credit for it, so, that would be interesting too.
Don't turn us loose, we'll just keep going.
Also, another interesting thing would be how many hours of homework you spend per AP class, if you know, just to
Yeah.
see what, you know, because people are committing a lot to this and knowing that they're gonna have whatever.
Yeah, we do try to
Okay.
keep, try to limit the number of questions just so students will respond to them.
I know how you feel sometimes, yeah.
Very diplomatic.
Yeah,
Stand
yeah,
down,
yeah.
Amy, we will stand down. See, this is
I should
what
say, I never have that feeling,
This is
yeah.
what happens.
Yeah. Okay, thank you, Amy. So next, we're gonna move it around a little. Bill, if you could go next with finance.
Finance Committee met today. That was me, Debbie Braunfeld, Greg Stankovitz, Beth Barron, and Stephanie and Steve Cochran. And couple maybe points of note from today. The breakfast and lunch prices will remain the same next year. That was nice to hear. We talked a bit about the prescriptions, and next week, well, one note back, yeah, prescriptions are about $3 million of our budget, and significant cost. So next meeting, which is June 12th at 10:30 a.m. here, we'll be meeting with a representative from Express Scripts to understand better about our pharmaceutical costs, how that works. Is there anything we can do to better understand how this works? We then looked at, besides some cost savings, we looked at some of the numbers in our bills and invoices. I pulled out a couple that I thought were interesting. John Baker Recording Services. I asked Stephanie what that could possibly be, and it turns out we record some of our concerts and plays, and then the students sell the CD and DVDs. I thought that was a nice way to spend some money that keeps stuff going into the future from what they've done. I always like to try to find something I can trip up Stephanie on. And so, so far I'm like 0 for 23. But who would imagine that the finance could get you a little bit emotional? But I thought I had Stephanie. McCaffrey's autism services? Surely it's miscalculated or miscategorized. No. And then this gets where me a little tear-eyed almost. That said they're buying stuff there so they can teach kids with autism about how to navigate shopping so they can become independent. And that's really, I don't know, a little bit heartwarming for just a few $100s. So I thought that was a really nice number to talk about tonight. So, wipe the tears away. We moved on to some cost reduction ideas, talking about trying to come up with some revenue sources as well. We talked about our management efficiencies form, which we passed over to Stephanie, who's going to take a first shot at looking at, seeing how to implement it. I'd like to then maybe, Beth, you would talk about the presentation Monday of this week at the last week, today's Tuesday, last week at the library. I think it was Monday, wasn't it?
Yeah, last Monday. We gave a presentation at the public library last week as part of a series put on by Ingrid Reed that talks about where your tax dollars go. And so we had the opportunity as a finance committee to speak about the school finances, which was, I think, a great opportunity for us to put together a set of slides that help explain to the public a little bit about where the levies go, how the levies work, what we're spending our money on, what are the key drivers, and what are the 10-year trends. And I think in putting those together, it gave us some ideas about further things that we're going to look into and try to explain further to the public. And so we were really pleased to be part of that program. And we have posted our presentation and slides. They are on the website. If you go to this place that says About Us, about the schools, there's a section for the school board. And if you go down the page, there's a place where we start to talk about the budget. So we have those slides right next to the budget, which I hope will help taxpayers understand a bit of the budget, because we do have a very nice presentation from our business administrator every year on the budget, but it is incredibly complicated and complex as our school finances. So we tried to take some of it apart and show some more simple points from it, although there's lots more that we can do, obviously.
So again, June 12th, 10:30 a.m. in this room. It's really an interesting meeting to attend. I don't know why people don't find finance more interesting, but do show up. It is really interesting.
Okay, thank you, Bill. Next, facilities with Chair Daphne Kendall.
So, everyone who had the questions, I have your answers, but I guess I'll just speak to my fellow board members who already know this. So, the Facilities Committee met yesterday to discuss the referendum. We saw initial renderings of the 5-6 school. The committee provided feedback to the architects, and they will continue to refine its design. We look forward to sharing the design with the public. We also spoke about how we can improve communication about the referendum. So to this end, I wanted to clear up some of the confusion surrounding the proposed work to be done at Princeton High School. The budget for the high school is $56,566,700. Of this amount, $18,565,500 is new construction, courtyards, and second-floor additions. $32,472,000 will be spent on renovating the existing space, including $3.4 million will be spent on security and safety. $2 million will be spent on asbestos abatement. $813,000 will be spent on fire protection, like sprinklers. There currently aren't any sprinklers at the high school. And $3.4 million will be spent on security and safety. $1.3 million will be spent on athletic-related improvements to the locker rooms and renovations to the gym space. And this does not include the proposed improvements to the athletic fields, which is outside of this. So to be clear, we're proposing work to the high school that will increase capacity. But we are also proposing much-needed renovations and repairs to the building, including to the HVAC units that cannot be done without a referendum. Our next facilities committee meeting will be held here on June 11th at 11 o'clock. Thank you.
Thank you, Daphne. Okay, so next is personnel with Chair Debbie Bronfeld.
Thank you. The Personnel Committee met 3 times this past month. We met Friday, May 4th. The committee met all day and listened to presentations from principals and supervisors on non-tenure candidates eligible for tenure in the 2018-2019 school year. We also heard presentations on first, second, and third year non-tenure staff. The committee had regular meetings on Monday, May 7th and Monday, May 21st. The committee is reviewing the job descriptions for the outreach coordinators at each school. The second annual Diversity Job Fair was held in April. Of the 34 attendees, 17 were African American, 6 were Asian, 2 were Hispanic, 4 were white, 3 were mixed race, 1 was Indian, and 1 was North African. 31 were female, and 3 were males. Residency audit letters will be sent out to all PPS and PCS families in the next few weeks, and hearings will start next month. Last week, there was a district-wide search for a supervisor of mathematics and business education. Tonight, the board will be approving Kelly Curtis for the math supervisor position. On June 14th, the district-wide search will be held for a supervisor of language arts, which is for grades pre-K through 8. The Sick Leave Bank Committee met and approved 3 employee requests for extra sick days from the bank. This was the largest request of the committee. Staff can donate a day to the bank during open enrollment every year. Thank you.
Thank you, Debbie. Okay, and next policy, Chair Greg Stankiewicz.
Thanks, Pat. So, Policy Committee met on Friday, May 11th, and we have 8 bylaws for second readings tonight. We shared with the board the changes we made after first readings to, I think, 3 of them. The changes were fairly minor, but included just a way of trying to make sure that our bylaws reflect our current practices. So it opens it up so that any decisions can be brought to the board or to the policy committee, not just on the advice of the board president and the superintendent, but also if a majority of the board feels that there should be an issue that is being brought up. And we thought that was just a way of trying to broaden the ability to talk about as many issues as possible that impact our schools. So those are up for consideration for second reading tonight. Next month, we will be meeting on Friday, June 8th at 10:15 a.m. is the public session. We welcome your participation. Next month to the full board, we'll be presenting more of a draft framework and resources to support our proposed equality and anti-bias policy to help the full board get a better sense as to where the policy committee is coming from. We're also going to we've started our discussion about taking a look at our vaping policy and if there are changes warranted in that as well. So we look forward to comments at policy committee, and we look forward to next month's meeting. Thanks.
Great, thanks, Greg. Next, student achievement with Chair Betsy Baglio.
Thank you. The Student Achievement Committee met twice since our last board meeting. Student Achievement met in closed session at 11:30 a.m. on May 2nd to discuss confidential matters. Student Achievement also met at 11:30 a.m. on Friday, May 11th. Dr. Eddie Cohen, Supervisor of Science, attended to give us an update on summer programs he has planned for underserved students at the middle and high school levels. Excuse me. Dr. Cohen also gave an update on a computer science grant program. The committee wants to thank Dr. Cohen and our science educators for their initiatives that they continue to work on to meet the needs of all the students in our district. The meeting then adjourned to closed session to discuss confidential matters. We will meet twice in student achievement before our next board meeting. June 1st at 11:30 is a closed session meeting. June 8th at 11:30 is an open meeting, and we invite the public to join us on June 8th. Thank you.
Thanks, Betsy. And do we have a report for alternative revenue this month?
So we don't have anything to report. Hopefully, we'll have some good news to share at our June meeting.
Great, thank you. Looking forward to it. And Betsy, the chair of our equity committee.
Yes. The Equity Committee met here at 9:30 a.m. on Thursday, May 3rd. That meeting focused on a conversation with our staff members, including outreach coordinators who support our underserved students, And that was so that we could all continue to understand what is needed in our district. Since that time of the meeting, the members of the committee have worked via email on a survey regarding data collection, starting with the area of athletics. So June 7th is our next meeting. It will be at 10 a.m. right after Meet the Board. You're welcome to stay for the equity meeting. And we'll plan to review data regarding athletics, and the public's invited to attend.
Quick question, do you know where that is in the process? Do we know if it's been
I don't.
sent to Brian, or am I supposed to send it to Brian, or
No, I think that would come from Steve. So
Okay.
the athletics survey. So I think we're still working
in the process? Okay,
And-
just make sure I didn't drop it.
But I do understand that Brian had a concussion, and he's been walking around Princeton High School in sunglasses, so,
Brian, feel better.
yeah.
Okay.
Yep,
Yeah,
Eddie.
he's fine, although he did say that it has increased his sense, his empathy for our students who go through the same thing.
Did he take the impact test before you?
He did, yeah.
Right, thanks. Okay, so now we're going to move on to...
Pat, can I just
Yes, go ahead,
add
Greg. Yeah,
thing?
sorry.
Thanks. I just wanted to report because I'm also the representative for the school board to the Princeton Planning Board. And so I know this is an important issue that's up now, and I wanted to give the board a very quick rundown. Last Thursday evening, the mayor, the council, and the Princeton Planning Board met and publicly announced the first draft of Princeton's housing element and fair share plan. So I just wanted to very, very quickly point out a couple of things. This plan is a response to what the court has ordered Princeton to present by the end of the summer. It's a proposed plan to meet Princeton's current round of affordable housing obligations and goes up to 2025. Princeton is already credited for the work it's done, and it's 261 units of affordable housing. We need to meet 753 units by 2025. So the proposed plan right now identifies 308 additional affordable housing units, along with 188 bonus units to take us up to that obligation. It's a mix of types of housing, and the council was very adamant about pointing out that it follows smart growth guidelines. So we want to make sure that affordable housing is placed in places in our community where the residents have an easier access to services. My key takeaway points on behalf of the board right now are that by law, the drafting of this plan cannot take into consideration the impact that this will have on future students. It can't take in consideration as well the impact on infrastructure. This is an obligation that we must meet, and we have to, and it'll be done by the council and go before the planning board. I do want to point out, though, that the number of proposed affordable housing units, 308, and the total number of proposed units to get to that 308, which is 1259, are in the range of predictions that our demographer had already included in our demographic studies. So I know that our demographer will be updating his studies for the Princeton schools once again with this new data. But there was some confusion, I think, by some of the people who were there at the meeting, thinking that this is going to force a second referendum on top of the first one. And I just wanted to, at this point, just point out that thanks to the forward planning of this body, we've kept in mind the obligations that were coming down the pike. And so we already have worked that into the planning going forward, and it'll just be refined now that we have some preliminary numbers. There's a website, and thank you, Debbie, for sending that out to the members of the board. There's a very good website on the council's and on Princeton's municipal webpage that gives you more details. It's a very, very compressed schedule. The council and the municipality have to present a finalized plan by the end of August. It has to go back to the judge by July 24th. So the planning board and the council will be spending many a long night, I'm afraid, between now and then. And so I'll try to keep everyone updated as well. I know a lot of you were there on last Thursday. Our municipal administrator, Mark DeShield, also pointed out last Thursday about the cooperation that he sees between the school district and between the planning board and between the municipality. And he praised that. He said the process is moving forward both on the Fair Share Plan and on the referendum. The two are intertwined in a lot of ways. These are both very large issues facing our community, and he just wanted to thank the superintendent, the business administrator, for the cooperation in planning going forward. And I'll keep everyone informed.
Great, thank you, Greg.
Can I ask you a quick question?
Sure.
On the demographer report, somebody today mentioned that they keep revising it because of errors. I thought it was as new information was generated, they updated. I just want to make sure that I understood that right.
Yeah,
Okay.
we keep revising it so we get the most accurate information. As we get new information, we incorporate that into the report. But we did request that because we realize there are a number of versions that are out there, iterations rather. So we have asked the demographer to combine it into one comprehensive package that includes all of the assumptions used in generating the demographic projections, as well as the most updated projections themselves. So we're working on that.
Yep.
But it has always been accurate. It's just been updated as new information comes along. That's the only thing I wanted to, that was my understanding. And so I thought maybe there was an incorrect statement about there had been errors in it, which it sounds like it has always been correct.
It's not an exact science. So,
but as correct as it can be, as new information comes along, it gets updated.
Correct.
So,
yes. Yeah.
Oh, I had one other thing.
Okay, sure.
Yeah. Daphne had mentioned that PHS PTO has purchased several new bike racks for our high school, which I'm really, really excited about. And I also want to say, I think back in October, I started talking a lot about the traffic at the PAC in the morning. And I will have to say, I'm really, really happy to say that the administrators and the police really work together, and it's been really great all year. And now that the weather's so beautiful too, all the kids are biking again. So it's really great. We're going to have more places for bikes because it was a little hairy there. But
And today was Bike to School Day, as you probably know.
yes.
That's
So
great.
it'll be great. So thank you.
It's a good feeling, isn't it, to like have something done? So yeah, congratulations on that, because I know you were pushing that in the fall, so it's nice. Okay, since we haven't had a public comment period in about 15 minutes,
Yeah.
it's time for item J, public comment on agenda items. I think probably, my guess is everybody spoke who wanted to speak, but if you want to speak on agenda items only, you're welcome to come up. And again, we're going to limit you a little bit, but it's not like
I'll be
last
quick.
time.
This is
Okay.
short. So I want to address two things that are on the personnel agenda, and I understand how I have to be very circumspect in what I say in discussing people on the personnel agenda. One may be just a clerical error. There's somebody listed tonight for a new position who's already an employee, and so I believe that should be a transfer and not a new position or a new appointment. I don't want to mention the name.
Okay, maybe we can talk about that afterwards. We'll make that correction.
Okay. The other thing that I want to address is by first reading the Part A of Article 1 of the PREA PPS contract, which says the board hereby recognizes the association as the exclusive representative for collective negotiations concerning grievances and terms of conditions of employment for all contractual certificated personnel who comprise the unit as follows. 1, teachers. 2, guidance counselors and school counselors. 3, nurses. 4, librarians and media specialists. 5, psychologists. 6, social workers. 7, learning consultants. 8, supplementary instructors. 9, therapists. 10, athletic trainers. And 11, any other temporary appointments made to the unit. Under the non-affiliated appointments for tonight, there are 2 people who have those titles, and that confuses me. And I don't want to be any more specific than that because I don't want to pull out their names, right? That would be inappropriate, I think.
So if we have to make that correction, that the PREA leadership is asked to speak to Lou about the unaffiliated versus PREA membership, and if we have to make that adjustment, we can certainly do that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Bell. Anyone else for comment on the agenda items? Yeah,
Quick
thanks.
question. Did the schedule...
Sorry, could you just say who you are? And
Sorry,
question?
my
Yeah.
name's Christian Martin. I'm a junior at Princeton High School. Does the schedule presentation given by Mr. Snyder fit into agenda items? Because it was before the last public
I
comments.
think so, yeah.
I wasn't going to speak because I know we're trying to get through this meeting and I certainly want to get home, but I just have to, I feel compelled to voice that. I think it's a little unfortunate that the rotating periods, it does come at an enormous cost, and I think that, to me, it seems very unfeasible for high schoolers, for kids at the high school to be able to take university classes now. And we've been told many, many times we'll still make it work. As somebody who seems very interested in taking advantage of this opportunity, frankly, it seems like one of the best things about PHS. It's like something so unique to us, such an opportunity for us to have this great institution in our town. And frankly, it saddens me very much that looking at this, I know I was just speaking with my guidance counselor. Frankly, it just doesn't look like it's going to, as much as we're being told it's going to work out.
Right.
I don't see a way in which it actually does translate. So I just had to voice that. I think it's.
Yeah, no, thanks for letting us
But
know
I
about
understand
that.
it's a complicated situation.
Yep,
Okay,
thank you,
thank you.
Christian.
Yeah, we really appreciate students coming to speak. It's a great, we're really happy to have you, just wanted to say. So with that, we move to item K, which is policies. And so these are consent items, but does anyone have any questions or comments on the policies at K1 that Greg mentioned in his board report? If there's none, I just note that you're taking more power away from the president. But, you know, I'll vote for it anyway. Yeah, I'll let it go. I'm not going to fight that. Okay, so that's a consent item. And then we move to item L.
Can I interrupt you? on
Sure.
this one? They were separated by different votes, just in case people wanted to vote differently, but if everybody just wants to vote, in the same on all the answer. Or
On L through
items, on all Ls, we can do it as a bulk.
L through 5,
Well,
1 through 5.
So can I just see a show of hands if everyone is not okay with doing all the personnel as one vote? Yeah. So nobody wants to split anything out. Okay, so we can do it as one. Do you want to make any comments before?
Just no. Looking through the personal actions, there's one I would highlight, which is actually two. You had mentioned that Kelly Curtis is our going to be our new math supervisor, K through 12 math supervisor. A number of you were probably involved in the selection process, and so there were excellent candidates who came through. But Kelly really shined in that she had more than 15 years of math teaching experience at the high school, teaching AP Calculus and foundations of algebra, and being able to differentiate instruction for students at that level. She taught at the middle school level, and then most recently she was a supervisor of science and STEM education in Roxbury, K through 5. So she has the experience of working at the elementary level. She came with wonderful endorsements. We're incredibly excited to have her join our team as the K through 12 supervisor, and we're very lucky, I think, to get someone who has experience, high-level experience at all levels with teaching.
Okay, and while we're on the personnel agenda, are you done? I'm sorry.
The other one I would also mention, just as a highlight, would be the transfer that Valerie Ehrlich, our principal at Riverside, has asked to join those of us here in central office in the position of sort of coordinator of grants and special projects. This is, we had a retirement from that position in April, and it was one that she was very interested in. She has a great deal of experience in working particularly with state and federal grants, Title I grants, and that's a big part of that job. I know Annie is very excited to have Valerie join her. It's a loss at Riverside, and I want to just comment that I think Valerie, in the 2 years that she was there, did a wonderful job, particularly of focusing on inclusion of all children, and that we know will continue, but we're excited to have her join us here in central office. She's moving from an administrative position to an unaffiliated position, but will be working very hard and growing professionally, which is what I think she was really looking to do.
Okay, did you have a comment? Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, Steve. Okay, so I just wanted to take the time to wish Meredith Doherty, who is an assistant at Littlebrook School, a happy and healthy retirement. I got to know Meredith because she worked with my son at Littlebrook. She was always very kind and very patient. So I wish her the best. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I just had a question, and I meant to ask Lou this beforehand. I noticed for the transfers, we have 5 math teachers increasing from 1.0
Yes.
to 1.2. So it seemed that instead of hiring another math teacher, we've increased.
No, actually, so this is
Okay.
this is actually a great thing, and I want to thank the faculty. It's for a very short period of time. So we had a math teacher who went out on leave just for like 19 days, and rather than trying to bring in a sub who might not be able to know the math curriculum as well, the teachers, her colleagues stepped up and said, "We'll teach an extra class." So just for that 19-day period. So that's why it's reflected. It's 1.2, but it's prorated for whatever portion,
see,
19, I think it may be 19 days.
Just for
but
June. That's wonderful.
Just for those days.
That's great. That'll be great for the students.
Yeah,
Thanks.
no, it's a continuity of instruction, so we're grateful for that.
Great, thanks. Okay, so item L is a electronic
and-
vote.
yes.
We need a first and
First and
second for
second.
all matters on item L. Debbie, and second Daphne.
Okay, so this is actually a roll call, so
Oh, sorry.
I can do this one. Patrick Sullivan?
Yes.
Betsy Baglio?
Yes.
Beth Barron?
Yes.
Debbie Braunfeld?
Yes.
Jessica Deutsch?
Yes.
Bill Hare?
Yes.
Daphne Kendall?
Yes.
Evelyn Spahn?
Yes.
Greg Stankiewicz?
I need to abstain on one of the sections, and it is. Oops, I just lost it again, sorry. Should I abstain on the whole thing?
No,
No,
just on the number. Do you
I
have,
say
the
yes.
number?
Yeah, I think I have it. Sorry.
That's fine. This is the least thing that's holding us up.
Yes, so it's the second file. So it's under personnel actions. L1,
Personnel actions, okay.
L1,
L.
second component.
One, second item, okay.
Thank you.
And we'll mark the minutes that way. Okay. Okay, motion passes. So that's for L1 through 5? Is
Correct.
that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, so with that, we move to item M. So do we need a motion second for all of M before we discuss?
Well, no, because
No,
they're all
okay.
consents, so if you want to
So
just,
any questions or comments on anything in item M?
curriculum and instruction.
Some of which I think was mentioned by you, Betsy, in your report. If there's none, we're going to have one vote on all this at the end, so then we move on to item N.
Special services. and
Special
student
services, any
education.
questions, comments on that? If there aren't, then we'll move to item O.
I just had one question.
On O?
On O, for this food service management company, this item is just to renew for the fiscal year, correct? For the school?
For 1 year, it's the fifth year,
Fifth year of a five-year
We'll-
contract.
We'll rebid it in January. The specifications come out from the
Thank you very
state.
much.
Okay. All right, and if there's no other questions on O, then this is our consent vote. And we need a motion second for all of that. Correct. So, motion second, Beth, a motion, Beth, and a second, Greg.
Okay, now this is the electronic vote. If anybody needs help, just let me know. Or don't have it on. Just let me know.
Okay, we all set?
No, I'm waiting for one.
Okay.
Is assistance needed?
It asked me to log back in, it said authentication was lost.
We're having trouble with the board docs connection. What's your vote? I'll just take it for you.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Oh, wait, hold on. Yeah, there it goes.
All right.
Yes.
Any other final comments from the public tonight before we wrap up? And if there's none, yeah. Yeah. Any other comments from the board? I think the one thing I would just say is for the people at home, is thank you for again, thanks for everything that you did tonight. And I mean, the people who were here and now gone home. This is an important issue, the cranberry thing, and we need to think through it. And as I said, I think all of us believe what we're working for is what's best for our kids, what's best for our taxpayers. And we all need to know the facts, the law, the economics, the ethics of all of this, and we will be working on it, and hopefully have a few Q&A sessions along the way. Did you want to say anything?
Yeah, I just want to give a quick shout out to a parent in our community, Jenny Bryant, who last week attended a meeting of the Equity Committee where a need was identified, a barrier that some students in our schools were facing, and it was something very simple that was becoming a barrier. And Jenny took it upon herself to organize a drive for feminine hygiene products collected at the a film screening of the Ruth Bader Ginsburg movie at the Garden Theater. And it was I think there are 3 gigantic garden bags full of the supplies that were needed. And it was a question of the need was identified, group of people talked about it and figured out there was something we could do about it and took care of it, and it's done. And I think that represents kind of the best of our community of caring about equity and doing the right thing. And it makes me proud to be a member of this board and a member of this community. And thank you, Jenny Bryant.
Well, thank you, Jess.
Yes.
Thank you.
Oh, and Stephanie, someone needs some place to put the feminine hygiene products. I'll remind you later.
We'll have to find it in the budget somewhere, right? Yeah. Okay. Any other questions or comments? If there are none, then could we have a motion to adjourn? Daphne, second, Debbie. Okay, we are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
I heard there was a closet.